Chapter 1203, Wolf King of Greed. Feng Yixiao, are your feelings reliable? Are you just going to believe in your feelings like this? Feng Yixiao weirdly looked at the disheveled man. This was the first time he had ever come across such an interesting Earth Saint Master in his long history of being alive. However, Feng Yixiao understood that the disheveled man before him was not particularly impressive in terms of strength, but he did possess a truly unique aspect, or Feng Yixiao would not bother with a mere Earth Saint Master with his current strength and prideful personality. The disheveled man nodded firmly. He said without any room for disagreement, I believe in my feelings very much. Ever since I began my journey on this path, I felt that they have not been wrong. Everything that I feel will happen. Oh, since your senses are so sharp, then can I ask if you will forget people you don't want to forget? Feng Yixiao asked in much interest as he bit into his roast chicken. The disheveled man became very dejected and lost all appetite. He lowered his head and said with a heavy voice, I am afraid of thinking about that, and I am also afraid of sensing the future of that. I'm afraid that some sorrowful things will happen to me. The disheveled man fell silent for a little longer. He seemed to understand something. He deeply sighed and said, severing the emotions and desires is not forcing yourself to forget but to break free from them. There should not be any pain in the entire process, only indifference. I have still yet to sever my emotions for my family, which is why I am in pain, but in the future, if I sever this unknowingly, I will never feel like this again. At that time, my family in my eyes will be nothing. I will forget everyone at that moment, including my mother. The disheveled man's voice was filled with deep sorrow. He knew extremely well that if he overcame this last obstacle, he probably would be able to reach an unmatched level of cultivation. His strength would drastically increase, but he would abandon all his emotions at the same time. He did not want to do this. He would rather be an ordinary person than abandon his connection with his parents, except he had no other choice. Right now, his fate seemed to have been predetermined. He could not stop if he wished. All he could do was proceed along the path. Feng Yixiao threw the last chicken bone far away before downing the entire flask of liquor. Afterward, he stood up and said, Kid, since you're so sorrowful, let's not talk about this. Look at you. You're a man, yet you're about to cry just like a girl. I just happen to have matters I need to attend to. I've already spent quite a lot of time with you, so I can't waste any more time. I gotta go immediately. The disheveled man calmed down very quickly. He stood up and said, Senior, thank you for helping me in the past few days. If there is a chance, I will definitely return the favor. Feng Yixiao chuckled aloud. He said, return the favor? Ha ha ha, you probably won't even remember who I am the next time we meet. Would there still be any favors to return? Senior, I definitely won't forget you, the disheveled man replied rather awkwardly. All right. Enough of this. Kid, aren't you going to the Jessan Kingdom? There's still over 100,000 kilometers, so you probably have to walk for a few years with just your legs. That just happens to be in the direction I'm traveling, so I'll just carry you with me. I can't take you all the way to Jessan Kingdom, but at least it'll cut down the distance you have to walk, Feng Yixiao said in an extremely straightforward manner. For a mere Earth Saint Master to receive the help of a 9th heavenly layer Saint Ruler would be a great honor. However, the disheveled man behaved as usual. All he did was smile gratefully before calming down. He was not excited in any way. Feng Yixiao had grown accustomed to his calm demeanor long ago. Without saying anything more, he grabbed the man's shoulder and left extremely hastily. A white-robed, middle-aged man with an extremely ordinary appearance silently appeared where they had been after Feng Yixiao had left. He looked in the direction the two of them had traveled off to in a trance and mumbled, Changyang who's at the last, crucial stage of breaking through to worldly transcendence. All he needs is one final step to overcome it. Changyang who has experienced a lot during his journey after he left the Pure Heart Pavilion. He has experienced tests of life and death and understood the various aspects of life, allowing him to take a solid step in worldly transcendence. It's just a pity that Feng Yixiao suddenly appeared halfway through. Not only did he fail to help Changyang Hu, he even ruined it all, or Changyang Hu probably would have been able to severe the last part before the journey ended. Feng Yixiao is letting Changyang Hu arrive home sooner. I wonder if it'll affect anything. A saint ruler would actually become interested in a mere earth saint master. Sigh, is this really the will of the heavens? Even the heavens have organized Changyang Hu to meet with his family in this last stage. Feng Yixiao hurried along using spatial force. He fused with the surrounding space and completely disappeared. Although he moved extremely quick, he was unaffected by the drag of air, so he moved in complete silence. The disheveled man being carried along with him could only look at the blurry landscape that shot past beneath him. When they flew over a city, he could not even see what the city looked like. In less than half a day, Feng Yixiao traversed several tens of thousand kilometers with his strength as a saint ruler at the 9th heavenly layer. In the end, he stopped 10 kilometers away from a small town. Kid, I can only take you here. You need to rely on yourself for the future journey. Take these purple coins and buy some things you need when you travel. Feng Yixiao was straightforward and extravagant, throwing his space ring to the disheveled man. Senior, I don't need it, kid, there's never been the case where I take back things I give out. Are you looking down on my giving you things? Feng Yixiao narrowed his eyes and unhappily asked. The disheveled man had no other choice. All he could do was accept the space ring obediently. Feng Yixiao patted his shoulder. Kid, look after yourself in the future. I hope you can still remember who I am when we meet again next time. With that, he flew away before the disheveled man could reply. Senior, I will definitely still remember you when we meet next time, the disheveled man yelled in the direction Feng Yixiao had disappeared. The disheveled man did not leave and instead stood where he was, silently gazing in the direction had left Feng Yixiao. The two of them were strangers to one another, yet Feng Yixiao had actually helped him so much in such a selfless manner despite being a saint ruler. This touched him deeply. He could clearly feel Feng Yixiao's sincerity toward him during the days they had spent together. Feng Yixiao did not have any other intentions. Suddenly, the disheveled man's eyes darkened. There was no light at all in the darkness. It was like that had become a vast, infinite, and boundless space of darkness. If someone else looked him in the eyes, they would feel that their souls would be sucked in. But the next moment, faint glimmers of light suddenly began to flicker in his dark eyes. They were like the stars of the night sky. His eyes seemed to contain some other space, some other universe. Suddenly, the man violently jerked. He returned his senses at that moment and his eyes immediately returned to normal. He cried out, "Oh no, Senior's going to die for sure. There's no chance of him surviving." With that, the disheveled man began to sprint in Feng Yixiao's direction. A mysterious force seemed to surge out of the ground with every step, pushing him forward. Although he was only an Earth Saint Master, his current speed was even greater than Heaven Saint Masters flying. Even wind-attributed 6th cycle Heaven Saint Masters would not be as fast as him. Jian Chen, Yu Yu, Bai Lian, Bai Hai, and the others currently sat around a table as they ate in the flame mercenaries' den. Even Dugu Feng was present. Although Jian Chen had basically subdued Dugu Feng as a servant back in Mercenary City, he had always treated him like a brother and never as an outsider. In reality, Dugu Feng lived up to Jian Chen's hopes as well. He forsook his own time to cultivate and took up the position of a disciplinary elder, pouring his heart into the development of the mercenaries. Dugu Feng had always been a quiet person, so he did not say much at all at the table. He seemed rather cold. Dugu Feng, it really has been busy for you during these past years. For the development of the mercenaries, you've even given up your own cultivation time. If you want to let go of everything you're doing right now, you can come find Bai Lian at any time. After all, your personal cultivation is more important. Possessing great strength is far more useful than possessing great authority, Jian Chen sincerely said. In his eyes, authority was not important at all. Even kings would need to lower themselves in front of saint rulers. Even one of the 8 great kingdoms like the Qinhuang kingdom would be nothing in front of saint kings. A wave of the hand would be all that was needed to reduce so many years of work into nothing. Now that the foundation of the Flame Mercenaries is stable, I need to spend another 2 years consolidating it, and then I can let go of everything I'm doing. I'll focus on cultivating after that, Du Gufeng expressionlessly replied. His voice was rather cold. Jian Chen laughed. At that time, I will make you into a saint ruler as soon as possible and give you the chance to become a saint king. CSG now has a Patreon set up, where you can read up to 35 chapters ahead. Chapter 1204, Feng Yixiao's enemy. A sliver of burning desire finally appeared in Du Gufeng's eyes. This was a desire to become a saint king. Jian Chen's words had influenced him very much. It's just a pity that Sans is out on a mission and not here. Otherwise, there would be one more person at the table with us. Speaking of which, Sans should take up the position as captain, Jian Chen rather regretfully lamented. The Flame Mercenaries may have been founded by Sans' father, but his strength is still low. If he becomes captain, it'll become difficult for everyone to follow his orders. It might result in fractures within the mercenaries as well, Du Gufeng fearlessly replied. Jian Chen did not get mad. Right now, we need Sans to grow up properly. Once he has enough strength, I'll pass on the position to him so he can take over his father's organization. I'll be able to hand it over for his father. With that, Jian Chen's eyes froze. He looked toward the east. He seemed to be able to see through many obstructions, and everything that happened outside could not escape his eyes even though he was inside. There's someone who has come with ill intentions. Looks like I've come at the perfect time, Jian Chen mentioned in a heavy voice as he slowly lowered his cup. What? Someone's come looking for trouble? Bai Lian obviously heard Jian Chen's mutterings. She became shocked. There was no one on the continent who did not know the name of the Flame Mercenaries. Ever since they had taken the city back from the Extinguishing Alliance, they had established their strength, such that all the major organizations on the continent would fear them. There was no one who dared to cause trouble for the Flame Mercenaries now, so Bai Lian had even begun to doubt if she had heard what Jian Chen had said correctly. Surprise appeared in Bai Hai's eyes as well. Other than the 10 protector clans of the continent, there was no one who would dare to provoke them with Jian Chen's infamy as the captain. Even the 10 protector clans were extremely fearful of Jian Chen. Perhaps it's a group even more tremendous than the protector clans? At this moment, an odd thought actually crossed Bai Hai's head, but he soon made a self-deprecating smile. Suddenly, a vast presence appeared in the sky, almost enveloping the entire city. The presence possessed the violence and boldness of a vicious beast. The howls of wolves seemed to ring out when the presence appeared. This was the powerful presence of a 9th heavenly layer saint ruler. It immediately pressed down upon countless mercenaries in the city to the point where they could not breathe. Many people became pale white as they felt like a mountain was squashing their chest, suffocating them. The mercenaries were not powerful. There were only a few heaven saint masters, and most of them were not even earth saint masters, so they were unable to endure the presence of a saint ruler. A young man who seemed to be around 30 years of age hovered in the air above the city with his arms crossed. His eyes were slightly closed, and he was emotionless, staring fixedly at the city lord's estate below. Who dares to cause trouble in Flame City? Name yourself. Someone yelled out from the estate, and with that voice, 5 old men shot into the sky from various parts of the estate. They were lightning fast and were out of the building in a flash before disappearing from where they were. They reappeared in the sky, facing the young man. The 5 saint rulers were all people who had joined the Flame Mercenaries. Aside from Bai Hai, they were the only other saint rulers in the entire city. The black-robed man on one side clearly recognized the young man among the five of them. His eyes narrowed and his complexion became rather unnatural. He exclaimed, "It's actually you, the Wolf King of Greed, Feng Yixiao." The young man glared at the old man and coldly smiled, "Gu Tu, I've searched you for 5 whole decades. I never thought that you'd actually be hiding in the Flame Mercenaries, which sure was unexpected. I let you escape last time, but I'd like to see where you run this time." With that, Feng Yixiao's presence skyrocketed. The powerful energy of a 9th heavenly layer saint ruler leaked from his body, which vaguely condensed into a howling wolf. Immediately, the wind began to blow wildly as energy of the world surged messily through the air. The 5 saint ruler all became extremely stern as fear filled the depths of their eyes. Their senses were exceptional, and they could tell that Feng Yixiao was at the peak of the 9th heavenly layer. He was a terrifying existence with half a foot planted across the threshold of Saint King, so he was even more terrifying than most 9th heavenly layer saint rulers. On the other hand, the strongest of the 5 of them had only reached the 5th heavenly layer recently, while the weakest was only at the 2nd heavenly layer. They were nowhere near Feng Yixiao's level, so even if they worked together, they would not be able to defeat Feng Yixiao if they really began to fight. "Feng Yixiao, this is the base of the Flame Mercenaries. I am a great protector of the mercenaries, so I cannot allow you to act so brazenly here. Are you not afraid of offending the Flame Mercenaries and declaring war against us?" Gu Tu asked. His enmity with Feng Yixiao was irreconcilable, and he had almost died to Feng Yixiao's hands 50 years ago, but he managed to flee in the end out of luck. Now that Feng Yixiao had come knocking on the door again, he was even more powerful than 50 years ago. Gu Tu could not flee even if he wanted to, so all he could do was rely on the Flame Mercenaries to scare him away. Feng Yixiao's killing intent in his eyes became denser. He coldly said, "Gu Tu, this is the enmity between the 2 of us. It has nothing to do with the Flame Mercenaries, so quit trying to scare me off by bringing them up." Gu Tu laughed aloud. He looked at Feng Yixiao like he was looking at a joke. Legend has it that the Wolf King of Greed is afraid of nothing and always does as he wishes. No one can stop him, much less change his mind. Looks like that is untrue today, being scared like this by the Flame Mercenaries. Feng Yixiao's eyes grew colder as fury filled his face. Powerful killing intent began to radiate out uncontrollably. What Gu Tu had said had completely agitated him. "Feng Yixiao, you will never have the chance to kill me. Of course, unless you don't want to live, since you are taking on the risk of becoming a public enemy of the Flame Mercenaries by attempting to kill a great protector of the Flame Mercenaries." Gu Tu became even more fearless when he saw how Feng Yixiao was fearful of the Flame Mercenaries. He began laughing aloud. Back then, he had almost passed away after being hunted down by Feng Yixiao, so he hated him very much. He could finally vent all of his anger now. CSG now has a Patreon set up, where you can read up to 35 chapters ahead. Chapter 1205, Changyang, whose arrival. 1. Feng Yixiao was an obstinate, unruly, and prideful person. Coupled with his dignity as a 9th heavenly layer saint ruler, how could he hold himself back against the provocation of an ant-like existences in his eyes? Even though he was very fearful of the Flame Mercenaries, he could not bear with being laughed at by an ant. "Gu Tu, do you really think that I will let you go just because you've joined the Flame Mercenaries? You've underestimated me far too much. If I want to kill someone, that person is dead for sure," Feng Yixiao icily said. With that, all that was left was an afterimage. He charged toward Gu Tu at an extremely great speed, arriving by his side instantly. He used his right hand to reach for Gu Tu's neck. Saint force surged in that hand, so it seemed to have become an extremely sharp wolf's claw. Gu Tu had never expected Feng Yixiao to actually attempt to touch him. He paled in fright and retreated as quickly as possible, using all he had to avoid Feng Yixiao's lightning-fast attack. The disparity between their strength was just far too great. It could be described as a chasm, so Gu Tu could only dodge when faced with Feng Yixiao's attacks. He did not even have the ability to fight back. Blood scattered through the air. Even though Gu Tu had used everything he had, he was still unable to dodge the attack. His neck had been reduced to a bloody mess while a large chunk of flesh had been clawed away. It was a vicious wound. Warm blood spurted from Gu Tu's neck like a fountain. It shot into the air like the blooming of a beautiful flower. Gu Tu clenched his wound tightly as he shot back. Fear filled his eyes. The wound on his neck would have already been fatal to a heaven saint master, but as a saint ruler, he would be fine even if he lost his body since his soul would be fine. Wolf King, why, you are declaring war on the flame mercenaries. Our great captain will never let you go, Gu Tu cried out desperately as he flew back in a panic. His voice had become extremely hoarse due to the injury of his neck. Feng Yixiao said nothing. His face was sunken and filled with icy cold killing intent. He shot past the 4 other saint rulers with a slight motion and pursued Gu Tuesday. Wolf King, you are acting far too brazenly to declare war against the flame mercenaries. Great protectors, please immediately punish him to protect the power of the mercenaries. Our dignity and honor cannot be sullied like this by the Wolf King, or none of us will be let off easily when Captain gets around to punishing us, Gu Tu cried out urgently in attempt to persuade the 4 other saint rulers to keep Feng Yixiao busy. The 4 saint rulers immediately shivered inside when they heard the captain mentioned. The light in their eyes began to flicker, and they became hesitant. They possessed both fear and respect for their Saint King captain. They really could not afford to be punished by the captain. Feng Yixiao suddenly sent an icy cold gaze toward the 4 of them, perhaps due to the fact that he had sensed that they had changed their minds. The 4 saint rulers leapt in fright inside from the glance. At that moment, all 4 of them seemed to feel like they were suffocating, greatly shocking them. This was not the first time the 4 of them had experienced something like this, but this was a feeling that could only be caused by Saint Kings, yet they had actually sensed it from Feng Yixiao right now, which they found to be quite unbelievable. Looks like Feng Yixiao will be able to break through to Saint King very soon. At that moment, similar thoughts crossed all of their heads with some envy. Protectors, listen to me. This is the enmity between Gu Tu and me. It has nothing to do with you. However, if you interfere, you cannot blame me for not showing some respect to your captain, Feng Yixiao coldly said before continuing to pursue Gu Tuesday. The 4 saint rulers remained exactly where they were. They did not move no matter what Gu Tu said. Feng Yixiao's strength filled them with fear, and he had even said what he would do if they did interfere. They were not stupid enough to seek their own deaths. Gu Tu could not fight Feng Yixiao at all. He was littered with wounds now. Other than the injury on his neck, Feng Yixiao had caused a fist-sized hole to his chest where his heart was. Thus, his heart had been reduced to mush in Feng Yixiao's hand while one of his arms was severed as well. He was in a miserable state. Gu Tu, I'd like to see how you flee this time. But don't worry, I won't kill you immediately. I'll torture you viciously first and then let you die in excruciating pain. Feng Yixiao sneered. His right hand seemed to have transformed into a sharp wolf's claw, constantly raking Gu Tu's body and clawing away blood and flesh. Heavily injured, Gu Tu was like a lamb waiting to be butchered. He could not help but cry out in a chilling fashion from the pain. He roared, "Wolf King, the captain will not let you go. You kill me today, and you'll end up the same as me not much later. I'll be waiting for you in hell." With that, Gu Tu grunted again. A piece of flesh near his waist had been carved away by Feng Yixiao. Stop. A great protector of the flame mercenaries is not someone you can humiliate like this. An old but clear voice suddenly rang out from the city lord's estate. Afterward, an old man furiously shot into the sky as a heavy and powerful presence wrapped around him. Feng Yixiao glanced at Bai Hai who flew over from below. He said, another saint ruler at the 7th heavenly layer, but that's still not enough to stop me. Gu Tu, I originally planned to let you live a little longer, but looks like I need to finish you off immediately to prevent any unnecessary problems. Feng Yixiao no longer tortured Gu Tuesday. With a thought, the space around Gu Tu froze, completely immobilizing him. Even in his peak condition, Gu Tu would have to use several attacks at full strength to break through the frozen space of a 9th heavenly layer saint ruler. Now that he was heavily injured, he could not even use 30% of his full strength. He was completely helpless against the frozen space. He was only left helplessly watching as Feng Yixiao approached him in an aggressive manner. Save me, Bai Hai. Gu Tu called for help in panic. Faced with the threat of death, he was filled with fear. Unfortunately, Feng Yixiao's right fingers had already stabbed deep into his head right after what he had said. Gu Tu's body suddenly froze before becoming limp, as if he had lost all power over his body. His wide-open eyes quickly lost their light as well. His soul was unable to escape in time, being dissipated by Feng Yixiao. How dare you? Sir, you are the first person who has ever killed a great protector of the flame mercenaries out in the open, Bai Hai roared out. He was utterly furious, and at the same time, a huge sword that was the width of a palm appeared in his hand. Pure and powerful water-attributed saint force wrapped around the sword as the surrounding space shook slightly from the terrifying energy. It began to twist. Fourth miracle water of Bai, Soul Chaser. Bai Hai knew that Feng Yixiao was very powerful. Yelling out, he used a saint-tier battle skill to deal with him. Immediately, a vast pressure descended from the sky, squashing him like an invisible mountain. The pressure was so great that Feng Yixiao sank slightly in the air. There were 4 forms to the battle skill of the Bai family. Each form belonged to a specific level: the human tier, earth tier, heaven tier, and saint tier. There were 2 techniques for the saint tier battle skill. One was an attack, Soul Chaser, while the second was a fleeing technique, Absolute Rebirth. Bai Hai was bathed in a dense water blue light. He raised his sword high up into the air before swinging it with lightning-like speed. The sword easily cut through space, which was ripped apart like a piece of paper, extending toward Feng Yixiao at an unbelievable speed. Looking closer, it would not have been difficult to sense the pulse of a sword, invisible to the naked eye, hidden within the rapidly expanding crack. It was the movement of the pulse that cracked the space. Although there was no earth-shaking commotion, its power was evident. Feng Yixiao drew his right hand from Gu Tu's head. Without even glancing at the corpse, he allowed it to fall to the ground. He said, I never thought that you would know a saint-tier battle skill. It is indeed powerful. With your strength at the 7th heavenly layer, it is more than enough to deal with a saint ruler at the 9th heavenly layer, but it's a pity that your opponent is me, the Wolf King of Greed, Feng Yixiao. Feng Yixiao remained composed in front of Bai Hai's saint-tier battle skill. He hurled a fist and surging energy poured from it. It instantly turned into a wolf, colliding with Bai Hai's saint-tier battle skill. The wolf collided with the sword pulse and the 2 of them silently disappeared. There was no shockwave at all. Both were reduced to the energy of the world. Bai Hai's eyes widened as disbelief plastered across his face. His saint-tier battle skill had actually been nullified by such a casual counterattack. He found it rather difficult to accept. Chapter 1206, Changyang Hu's Arrival, 2, Bai Hai's saint-tier battle skill was easily nullified by Feng Yixiao, which completely stunned Bai Hai. Even the 4 saint rulers in the distance were filled with disbelief as well. They knew that Feng Yixiao was extremely powerful and that they would not be his opponent even if they worked together. However, Bai Hai was still a 7th heavenly layer saint ruler. He still may not have been Feng Yixiao's opponent, but he was much closer at the very least. Coupled with the fact that he had used a saint-tier battle skill, it was enough to pose a threat to some saint kings. However, Feng Yixiao had actually completely nullified it with a simple strike. His strength was so terrifying that it shocked everyone present. This was because in their eyes, only a Saint King could easily nullify a Saint-tier battle skill from a 7th heavenly layer Saint Ruler. Feng Yixiao did not do anything else. He glanced at Bai Hai indifferently and said, "Since my enemy's dead, should leave as well." With that, he turned around and flew off into the distance. He had heard about the flame mercenaries and did not wish to completely offend this powerful organization. However, Feng Yixiao suddenly froze at this very moment. He came to a halt as his composed expression became extremely stern. He suddenly turned around and glanced in the direction of the city lord's estate with shining eyes. A meter-wide sword chi appeared out of nowhere and shot toward him with lightning-like speed. Like a streak of light, the sword chi possessed a shocking, violent, and destructive presence. It ripped through the space and caused the surrounding energy of the world to tremble like it was quaking in fear. Even the Saint Rulers and Feng Yixiao shivered inside. Feng Yixiao became extremely stern. Due to his special cultivation method, he possessed senses and instincts far sharper than an ordinary person. He could feel the threat of death on the black sword chi. The pressing presence and icy cold killing intent made him feel like he was suffocating. The sword chi moved extremely quick, so fast that Feng Yixiao could not even dodge it. It passed through his chest like a hot knife through butter, carving out a fist-sized hole. Feng Yixiao grunted as a mouthful of blood spurted out. It turned into a bloody mist as it rained down. He became extremely pale at that moment and lost his ability to levitate, falling out of the sky and toward the ground. Bang! Feng Yixiao struck the ground and a huge crater formed in the soft soil. Dust was kicked into the air. The Saint Rulers all became stunned by the sudden occurrence. None of them had thought that the imposing Feng Yixiao would be so weak before the sword chi. "Captain, it's Captain." Captains returned. Very soon, a Saint Ruler thought through everything and cried out in joy. The dark energy with its terrifying presence filled with violence and destruction is something that only Captain Jian Chen can control. Fantastic, I never thought that Captain Jian Chen had returned at this crucial moment. With Captain Jian Chen, the Wolf King's dead for sure. Our flame mercenaries are not one to be stepped over like that. The 4 other Saint Rulers were filled with excitement just like Bai Hai. Although they had never seen Jian Chen before, they were extremely familiar with Jian Chen's chaotic force since this never-before-seen energy had become a representation of Jian Chen. Although no one recognized the chaotic force, the unique presence of the energy had become known to many experts of the continent. Outside the city, Feng Yixiao climbed out of the crater with difficulty. He knelt on one knee with a pale face as his body gently trembled in an uncontrollable manner. His face was filled with pain and blood spurted from his chest wound like a fountain, dyeing all the soil red. Feng Yixiao was in excruciating pain. When the sword chi had passed through his chest before, a small amount of residual chaotic force was left behind, which was now rampaging violently through his body. His organs and blood vessels had all been reduced to a mess by the chaotic force. Even when he used all his power to suppress and resist the rampaging chaotic force, it was not enough to stop the chaotic force, let alone wipe it out. Jian Chen. I never thought that the captain would actually be in the city today, Feng Yixiao growled. He had heard many rumors regarding Jian Chen, so he immediately guessed the identity of the person who had shot out the sword chi. A white-robed figure quickly flew toward Feng Yixiao before stopping 3 steps in front of him. He was a young man who seemed to be in his 20s. He was handsome and possessed defined facial features that radiated a heroic spirit. His eyes were cold, and he did not give off any presence at all. He seemed just like an ordinary person. The young man stood with his arms crossed as he stared emotionlessly at Feng Yixiao. He said, "You sure are courageous to come kill a person of my flame mercenaries as just a mere Saint Ruler." Feng Yixiao raised his head to look at the young man. His eyes narrowed slightly when he caught sight of the young man's face. Although this was the first time he had personally seen him, he had seen many images of the young man in the past. "It really is you, Jian Chen." Feng Yixiao growled as he sighed inside about his luck. Feng Yixiao was bold enough to come to the flame mercenaries all by himself to kill Gu Tu because he was certain that the captain was not in the city. Coupled with that fact that he hated a wandering lifestyle and that he was at the edge of breaking through, he planned on killing off his enemy before settling down in some desolate region to cultivate. At that time, Jian Chen would not be able to find him no matter how great his abilities were. But he had never thought that Jian Chen would happen to be in the city. His original plan was sound, but fate had other ideas. Chapter 1207, Changyang whose arrival, 3, Jian Chen, my enmity with Gu Tu is personal. It has nothing to do with your flame mercenaries, so are you trying to interfere with our personal matters? Feng Yixiao growled. Even though he knew that the person before him was undefeatable, he felt no fear at all. Your enmity with Gu Tu has nothing to do with me, but Gu Tu is still a member of my flame mercenaries. Am I really supposed to let people kill off members of the flame mercenaries as they wish? Not to mention, you killed him right in the open, right in front of countless other members of the mercenaries, Jian Chen replied in an extremely indifferent voice. Feng Yixiao knew that he was done for today after listening to Jian Chen's reply. He clenched his teeth and was still rather unwilling to give in. He said, Jian Chen, you probably had already discovered me when I had arrived with your abilities. Why do you have to deal with me right after I killed Gu Tu and not before? At this moment, Bai Hai and the 4 other saint rulers arrived beside Jian Chen as well. The 4 of them looked at Jian Chen with unhidable admiration as well as some fear. Jian Chen looked at Feng Yixiao again. He turned around and flew back toward the city. He indifferently commanded, finish him off on the spot. Yes, Captain. The 4 saint rulers responded at the same time. Excitement filled all their eyes. Killing a 9th heavenly layer saint ruler was extremely stimulating to them as well as a great honor. Bai Hai looked at Feng Yixiao with some regret. He gently shook his head before turning and returning to the city as well. Bai Hai felt extremely regretful because someone who was just about to reach Saint King would die just like this. The level of a Saint King was a realm of cultivation that Bai Hai had longed for himself. The 4 saint rulers all smiled viciously. They had been deterred by Feng Yixiao to the point where they had not dared to do anything. They only helplessly watched as their companion was killed off. They felt extremely oppressed inside, and now they could finally vent their feelings. Looks like today is my death day. To think that I've wandered for all these years killing so many people. Even experts more powerful than me would fail to take my life, but in the end, I will die in the hands of a few ants instead. What a pity, what a pity. Feng Yixiao sighed at the sky as he was filled with regret. Although he was only struck by a single attack from Jian Chen, his wounds were extraordinarily severe. The destructive chaotic force rampaged within his body, and he could not suppress it at all. Every moment his wounds rapidly became worse. He had completely lost the ability to fight now. Although he could flee in the form of a soul, Feng Yixiao did not believe he had that ability in front of Jian Chen. The outcome in the end would still be the same. The 4 saint rulers all smiled viciously as they lifted their saint weapons. Killing a 9th heavenly layer saint ruler was something they felt they could take pride in, which was why they planned to finish off Feng Yixiao together. Stop! At this moment, a loud shout echoed over from the distance. As it came from just too far away, it had become extremely faint when it arrived where Feng Yixiao was. However, they all heard it clearly. Jian Chen jerked slightly and suddenly looking in the direction of the voice. On the horizon, a black speck had suddenly appeared. It was approaching the area with lightning-like speed. Although it was very far away, Jian Chen could see the person clearly with his eyes. Immediately, his indifferent eyes began to shine brighter as he stared fixedly at the black speck. Disbelief filled his face. The four saint rulers did not care who the person was. They swung their saint weapons at the same time, chopping at his heart, throat, head, and forehead. Feng Yixiao could only watch helplessly as the four saint weapons rapidly drew near. He did not even have the power to dodge due to the injuries from the chaotic force. "Stop, don't harm Senior Feng," the person yelled again. The voice was filled with panic, but it was still not enough to stop the four saint rulers. Jian Chen's face changed slightly when he heard that. Without any hesitation, he flicked a finger and shot out four weak sword qi toward the saint weapons of the saint rulers. Ding! 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 With four crisp sounds that sounded like metal colliding, the saint weapons were deflected by Jian Chen's sword qi. They swept past Feng Yixiao, and in the end, it struck the ground and produced a great hole with a loud boom. The four saint rulers looked at Jian Chen in surprise and were all filled with confusion. "You are dismissed," said Jian Chen, but he remained focused on the figure that drew closer and closer. "Yes, Captain." The four saint rulers respectfully replied and obediently stepped away after putting away their saint weapons. Jian Chen's orders were like the edict of a ruler. Even though they were all confused by his actions, none of them questioned him. The figure drew closer and closer and his appearance could gradually be made out. He was a disheveled but extremely burly man in tattered clothing. His messy hair covered most of his face and the only portion that could be seen was dirty. It was covered with dirt. He seemed like a beggar. The four saint rulers could not help but shift their gaze toward the disheveled man who ran over. They were extremely curious. They wondered just who this person was. They wanted to know who was enough to change the captain's decision of killing Feng Yixiao and make him personally deflect their saint weapons to save him. However, when they saw the man, gleams of light flickered through their eyes at the same time. As saint rulers, they could obviously tell that the man was only a Earth Saint Master, but he ran so quickly that even wind-attributed sixth cycle Heaven Saint Masters were no match for him. Even with Heaven-tier battle skills, it was impossible for an Earth Saint Master to run at such a speed. The beggar-like man ran to the side of Feng Yixiao with lightning-like speed, as if he did not notice the other people standing around. He dropped down to lift up the heavily injured Feng Yixiao and asked in worry, "Senior Feng, are you all right?" Feng Yixiao obviously recognized the man that he had just separated with. A sliver of surprise flashed through his eyes as he weakly asked, "Kid, why'd you come here? And how'd you catch up?" "Senior Feng, I felt that you were in danger when you left, so I immediately chased after you." "It's fortunate I wasn't too late," the disheveled man seriously replied. He was secretly relieved inside, extremely glad that he had made it in time. "You dumb brat. How can matters that even I can't change be changed by you? Leave here immediately, or I might end up dragging you in and causing trouble for you as well," Feng Yixiao powerlessly explained as he coughed blood. His injuries were still worsening, and it had even become rather difficult for him to speak. He even suspected that if Jian Chen did not kill him, he would only be able to last for another quarter of an hour or so. If he was a true Saint King, he might have been able to temporarily suppress the chaotic force if he used everything he had, but too bad he was not quite there yet. Jian Chen stared blankly at the disheveled man. His eyes were wide open with disbelief visible across his face. Brother," only a long while later did Jian Chen involuntarily mutter a word. His voice was filled with surprise. Didn't his brother go to the Pure Heart Pavilion? Why would he have appeared here of all times, and why was he in such a horrible shape? Chapter 1208, Jian Chen's worry. Changyang, who became stunned as well when he heard the extremely familiar voice. Instinctively, he looked toward Jian Chen and recognized the handsome young man at first glance. The young man was his youngest brother that he had not seen in quite a few years. His eyes immediately became filled with surprise, and he asked in astonishment, "Brother, how is it you?" However, he soon understood everything once he saw the huge city walls completely forged from tungsten alloy. He had never thought that he would arrive at the flame mercenaries' den by chasing Feng Yixiao. Jian Chen rushed over to Chang Yonghu's side with a long step as he looked at him in excitement and doubt. He asked, "Brother, didn't you go to the Pure Heart Pavilion? Why have you suddenly appeared, and why are you in such a horrible shape?" Did the Pure Heart Pavilion? Jian Chen paused there, but the meaning was self-evident. Everyone present understood what he meant. Jian Chen suspected that Chang Yonghu had been booted from the Protector clan, or how could he have ended up in such a miserable state? Even his clothes were not in one piece. Feng Yixiao immediately became shocked by what Jian Chen had said. Never did he think that the interesting kid that he had come across during his journey would be a disciple of a Protector clan. Other than that, Chang Yonghu's identity shocked him even more. He was actually the elder brother of the Flame Mercenaries captain, Jian Chen, which filled him with disbelief. Chang Yonghu obviously guessed what Jian Chen meant as well. He shook his head gently and said, "Brother, it's not what you think. Let's talk about it later." Chang Yonghu paused and glanced at the heavily injured Feng Yixiao in excruciating pain. He said, "Brother, just why did you and Senior Feng fall out? Why have you beaten to Senior Feng to such a degree?" Jian Chen glanced at Feng Yixiao with some mixed feelings. He asked, "Brother, do you know each other?" Chang Yonghu examined Feng Yixiao's wound as he said, "Brother, Senior Feng has saved my life before, so can you let him go for your older brother?" Jian Chen agreed without a second thought before striding over to Feng Yixiao's side. He gently pressed his hand on Feng Yixiao's shoulder, sucking away the residual strand of chaotic force. Feng Yixiao's face loosened immediately once he was free from the torture of the chaotic force. However, he still felt shocked because of the energy used by Jian Chen. The energy was just too terrifying. If it remained within him, he probably would have passed away without anyone else taking part. The four saint rulers looked at each other. They had never thought that they would witness something so dramatic. The Wolf King of Greed, who had rushed over aggressively to kill a saint ruler of the Flame Mercenaries, had actually known Jian Chen's elder brother, Chang Yonghu. They were speechless. On the other hand, Bai Hai was very calm as well. He did not seem to care that Feng Yixiao had slain a great protector of the Flame Mercenaries. With a flip of his hand, Jian Chen drew 3 thumb-sized pills from his space ring and passed them to Feng Yixiao. He said, "Since you've saved my brother's life before, I will no longer pursue the death of the protector. Here are 3 classed 6 radiant spirit pills. They won't be enough to completely heal your wounds, but they can allow you to recover some strength for battle. I have my own medicine." Feng Yixiao did not accept Jian Chen's pills and instead pulled out a jade bottle from his space ring. He poured all the pills in it into his mouth before immediately circulating his energy to heal. He was extremely heavily injured. Although the chaotic force had been sucked back by Jian Chen, he needed to stabilize his condition as soon as possible, or it might even lead to future side effects if it continued to worsen. Jian Chen put his pills away awkwardly before turning to Chang Yonghu, "Brother, I'll take you back to Flame City. We haven't seen each other in quite a few years, so let's catch up properly." Chang Yonghu wanted to catch up as well. It had indeed been quite a long time since he had last seen Jian Chen, so he had a lot he wanted to say. However, when he looked at Feng Yixiao, he became hesitant again. He said, "Brother, I'll watch over Senior Feng. Once he recovers, I'll come to Flame City." Jian Chen nodded before telling the 4 saint rulers to return themselves. He stayed behind with Chang Yonghu while Bai Hai had returned to the city after greeting Chang Yonghu. 4 hours later, Feng Yixiao opened his eyes. He was still rather pale. Although he did not make a full recovery after 4 hours, he had regained some strength. Jian Chen and Chang Yonghu spoke during those 4 hours, so he finally understood Chang Yonghu's current circumstances. However, as soon as he thought about the fact that his brother might end up forgetting about their brotherhood in the future, Jian Chen felt pained. In reality, Jian Chen had discovered what was happening with Chang Yonghu several years ago. Back then, when Chang Yonghu was limbless, he had already begun to display an abnormal mental state. He had never thought that after so many years, Chang Yonghu would have traveled further and further down that path. He had already severed most of his 7 emotions and 6 desires, and all that was left was his sentimental feelings. Senior Feng, you've woken up. How has the recovery gone? Chang Yonghu stopped talking with Jian Chen when he saw Feng Yixiao open his eyes. He arrived by his side and asked in concern. Feng Yixiao's opinion of Chang Yonghu had undergone some minute changes now. He could not help but laugh aloud when he heard Chang Yonghu ask about his well-being in such a concerned manner. He stood up and said, "I've recovered 30% and can run now." "Kid, I never thought that your identity would be something so impressive, truly catching me off guard. A few days ago, I saved your life, and now you've saved mine, so we no longer owe each other anything. Alright, I won't say anything more. Farewell. I hope that you will still remember me the next time we meet." Feng Yixiao walked away as he spoke. By the time he finished talking, he had already left. "Senior Feng, I will definitely still remember you the next time we meet," Chang Yonghu cried out to Feng Yixiao. Jian Chen frowned slightly when he heard that, and he became more and more worried. He had no idea how many years it would be when the two of them would meet again, nor did he know if Chang Yonghu would still treat their brotherhood and his connection with his family with importance. "Brother, why don't you stop going down that path and choose another cultivation method? I can help you find a suitable, pure cultivation method," Jian Chen suggested in some worry. He did not wish for his brother to change. Chang Yonghu sighed gently. He said, "Brother, I can't stop now. I feel like I have no other paths other than this one, and even if I don't want to proceed down this path, a mysterious force will push me along." Jian Chen fell silent. He could already sense that his brother's fate seemed to have been determined by the heavens. It could no longer be changed. The two of them became rather depressed because of fate. They both subconsciously stopped talking and arrived at the city lord's estate at the same time. "Brother, I heard that you let that troublemaker go. Is that true?" Bai Lian asked as she clung to Jian Chen's arm back at the estate. Jian Chen nodded, "It's because Feng Yixiao is the savior of my brother, so I let him go." "Brother?" Bai Lian became doubtful, but when she saw Chang Yonghu beside him, she became stunned. And her small mouth immediately fell wide open. She looked up and down to examine Chang Yonghu as disbelief flooded her eyes. "Brother Ahu, how is it you? Why are you like this?" Bai Lian asked in surprise as her mouth hung agape. You walked in from outside as well." When she recognized that the disheveled man was Chang Yonghu, she too became surprised. Chang Yonghu glanced down at his tattered clothes and indifferently smiled. He said, "What's wrong with this? I feel this is rather nice." Bai Lian stumbled back with what Chang Yonghu had said and almost fell down. Even you became speechless. Jian Chen could not help but laugh aloud as well. He dismissed all the worry inside him and said, "Liener, get some people to prepare some food and alcohol. I want to drink a few solid cups with my brother." "Alright, I'll go get that organized immediately." "Oh right, why didn't you save Great Protector Gu too, brother? Why did you only move after he had died?" Bai Lian asked in curiosity. "Liener, you need to understand that my Flame Mercenaries is not an asylum where people can seek refuge as soon as people encounter problems and thus break free from the problems. Gu Tu had no good intentions for joining our mercenaries. He wanted to use the Flame Mercenaries to deal with his enemy, and after his enemy was dealt with, he would probably have left us as well. What I did today was give warning to people who think like that. Just be more careful when you accept people in the future, said Jian Chen. Okay, brother. Jian Chen left Flame City earlier than planned because of Changyang Hu's arrival. The space gate constructed in the city when it had been captured by the Extinguishing Alliance was completely fixed as well. At noon on the same day, Changyang Hu put on a set of new clothes and left through the space gate to return to the Changyang clan with Jian Chen and Yu Yu. The return of the first young master made Changyang Ba and Ling Long extremely excited. Ling Long, who thought about her son all day and night, had even thrown herself at Changyang Hu's chest uncontrollably and burst into tears. Ever since Changyang Hu had left the clan several years ago, Ling Long felt like she was living in pain every day. The words of the pavilion master of the Pure Heart Pavilion from that day rang through her head like a curse every day. She really did fear that her precious son would forget her as a mother. Chapter 1209. Exposed. After returning to the clan, Jian Chen learned that Changyang Zhu Yunkong had already left. He went to Mercenary City all by himself and left behind a single sentence: he would not return unless he became a Saint King. Jian Chen knew that what had happened in the Protector clan must have affected Changyang Zhu Yunkong dearly as well. He wanted to quickly increase his strength since only Saint Kings had the right to speak before the Protector clans. Jian Chen spent an entire day in the clan with his brother. 2 days had already passed since he had made the agreement to go to the Bloodsword sect in 3 days, so only 1 day remained. The morning of the next day, Jian Chen convinced Yu Yu to stay in the clan. After that, he asked Rui Jin to construct a space gate to the sea before leaving all by himself. Jian Chen gained his bearings above the boundless ocean before flying toward Three Saint Island as quickly as possible. Shengguan Aojian's chubby, white face constantly flickered through his head. Jian Chen still felt that it was unrealistic that he suddenly had a son. Never had he thought that the heavenly enchantress would actually give birth to a child of his and that the child would possess the innate chaotic body. At this moment, Shengguan Aojian currently sat on a white boulder on Three Saint Island. His eyes were closed and he seemed to be amidst cultivation. Qin Qin, Shao Qian, Shao Yu, and the heavenly enchantress all stood right in front of him, keeping their eyes on him. Their gazes were filled with affection and unhidable concern. At this moment, Shengguan Aojian slowly opened his eyes. He could not help but wonder when he saw his 3 nervous sisters and his mother. He scratched his head and loudly asked, "Mum and sisters, why are you all staring at me?" Qin Qin, Shao Qian, Shao Yu, and the heavenly enchantress all became surprised when Shengguan Aojian had opened his eyes. Shao Qian asked in shock, "Shao Bao, you just ingested a pill refined from a 10,000-year-old heavenly resource an hour ago. Has all its medicinal effects just leaked away?" "Oh no. The effects of the pills on Xiao Bao have already begun to decline. Back then, Xiao Bao could last for half a day before all the medicinal effects leaked away completely when he ingested a 1,000-year-old heavenly resource. Yet now, a pill crafted from a 10,000-year-old heavenly resource only takes an hour. This is a pill that can allow utter cripples to undergo a metamorphosis, but it's actually completely useless to Xiao Bao. Is Xiao Bao fated to spend the rest of his life like an ordinary person?" Xiao Yu sighed. Shengguan Aojian stood up on the rock defiantly when he heard what Shao Qian and Shao Yu had said. With his hands on his hips, he loudly dud, "Sister Shao Qian, Sister Shao Yu, I'm not a cripple of cultivation. I have the most strongest innate chaotic body in the world, and the effects haven't leaked away. I've absorbed them all." With that, Xiao Bao seemed to think of something. He beamed with joy and announced, "And I have a name now. It's Shengguan Aojian." Shao Qian, Shao Yu, and Qin Qin all became curious. Shao Qian said, "The most strongest innate chaotic body? Xiao Bao, what innate chaotic body? Where did you hear that from? Why have I never heard you say that before? And Master didn't seem to give you the name Shengguan Aojian." Xiao Yu pinched Shengguan Aojian's cheeks playfully. She stared at him with her bright eyes and said, "Yeah, Xiao Bao. Shengguan Aojian definitely wouldn't be a name from Master, or Master would have told us for sure. Xiao Bao's so smart. I think you gave yourself the name, right?" Xiao Qian giggled. In that case, Xiao Bao also came up with that innate chaotic body. The three women chatted around Xiao Bao. They all showed a great amount of affection toward Xiao Bao. "No, it's all from Dad," Shengguan Aojian's cheeks swelled. He wanted to explain to them that the innate chaotic body was something his father told him and that his name was from his father as well. He even wanted to tell his three sisters that he had a father. "Enough Xiao Bao, eat this 10,000-year-old ginseng." However, the heavenly enchantress covered up his mouth before he could finish what he was saying. She then pulled out an ancient ginseng from her space ring. Xiao Bao's eyes lit up when he saw the heavenly resource. He immediately forgot what he was saying and wolfed down the heavenly resource. He sat down on the rock again after consuming it and entered a state of cultivation. Although Xiao Bao had never finished what he was saying, Xiao Qian, Xiao Yu, and Qin Qin heard him mention the word "dad" clearly. They all became suspicious. Xiao Bao's actually just mentioned that he has a father. Have I heard wrong? Master, what is this about? Why do I feel that Xiao Bao's changed so much after your trip out with Xiao Bao and that his name has changed for no reason? Xiao Yu asked the heavenly enchantress. She was extremely curious. The heavenly enchantress' expression became rather unnatural as the light in her eyes flickered. She became a little fearful of making eye contact with Xiao Yu, so she just turned around and said in an indifferent manner, "I met a great master during the trip and learned through luck that Xiao Bao's not a cripple, but in possession of the innate chaotic body." At the same time, the master passed on a cultivation method to him. However, his special constitution requires large amounts of heavenly resources to be consumed to create an extremely tremendous amount of energy to cultivate. Oh. Really? Xiao Bao's really not a cripple. That's just fantastic. Xiao Yu and Xiao Qian both became delighted by the news. Only Qin Qin glanced past the heavenly enchantress back in Xiao Bao's face from time to time as the light in her eyes flickered. An hour passed very quickly and Xiao Bao opened his eyes again after refining the heavenly resource. He looked at the heavenly enchantress eagerly and said, "Mom, more. Be a good boy, Xiao Bao. You can't eat too many heavenly resources, so that's enough for today. You can eat more tomorrow." Xiao Qian could not help but worry seeing how Shengguan Aojian wanted to eat more. Eating too many heavenly resources would leave after effects. The heavenly enchantress smiled as she looked at Xiao Bao in love. Just as she was about to pull out some more heavenly resources, her expression suddenly changed and she vanished with a flash. 10 kilometers away from the island, Jian Chen was stopped by the heavenly enchantress who had suddenly appeared. She stared at him cautiously, appearing right in front of his path to 3 Saint Island. "Why have you come?" The heavenly enchantress showed no goodwill, as if she did not welcome Jian Chen at all. Mixed emotions flooded Jian Chen inside as he looked at the heavenly enchantress. After learning that she had given birth to his child before, Jian Chen actually felt like he had no idea how to confront her. "I've come to see my son." A while later, Jian Chen still ended up declaring his intentions. "Return. 3 Saint Island no longer welcomes you." The heavenly enchantress turned Jian Chen away without any second thought. She did not leave any room for discussion. Xiao Bao seemed to sense something back on 3 Saint Island. He suddenly stood up from the rock and turned to face Jian Chen's direction. Although he was over 20 kilometers away, he could still clearly see Jian Chen. He immediately began to smile happily. Dad. I'm here. Although Xiao Bao had only seen Jian Chen once before, he behaved like they were extremely close. He jumped up and down on the rock and waved his hands at Jian Chen, afraid that Jian Chen would miss him. Dad, Dad. I'm here, Xiao Bao constantly called out. To everyone's surprise, his gentle voice could travel extremely far away, actually making it to over 20 kilometers and continuing to spread even further. Xiao Qian and Xiao Yu became stunned. They stared at Xiao Bao blankly as disbelief plastered across their faces. They had clearly heard Xiao Bao call for his dad. They doubted whether they had heard correctly or not. The heavenly enchantress' expression changed as well when she heard Xiao Bao's calls. A sliver of worry flickered through her eyes. She had never thought that Xiao Bao would still be able to recognize Jian Chen from so far away. Chapter 12:10. Father and son. Jian Chen's face immediately lit up in joy and excitement when he heard Xiao Bao. He immediately used the illusory flash. He took a step and hurried toward the mountain, leaving behind only an afterimage. The heavenly enchantress realized what he was doing and watched him rapidly approach the island. A struggle appeared in her eyes. She was confident that she could stop Jian Chen from reaching the island, or even stop him from getting anywhere near the island. However, that would mean that she had to fight Jian Chen. At the same time, she was unable to bring herself to stop Jian Chen. In that moment, the heavenly enchantress felt rather conflicted. Jian Chen moved very fast, traversing over 20 kilometers in an instant. While the heavenly enchantress hesitated, Jian Chen reached the island, so now it was impossible for her to stop him even if she wanted to. Dad, Dad, you've finally come. I miss you so much, Xiao Bao happily exclaimed. He jumped off the rock in a nimble fashion and ran over to Jian Chen with his arms open. He said, "Huggy." A sliver of never-before-seen tender affection appeared on Jian Chen's face as he stared at Xiao Bao's chubby and extremely cute face. He picked him up in one stroke and was so excited that he was left speechless. Qin stared at Jian Chen and Xiao Bao with mixed emotions. Although she had once guessed that Xiao Bao's identity would be like this, it was only a guess. She felt a dull ache at the bottom of her heart now that it had become a reality. Jian Chen's arrival should have been something worth smiling for Qin, but the outcome was the exact opposite. Qin could not raise her spirits no matter how hard she tried, and she became depressed instead. Xiao Qian and Xiao Yu failed to notice Qin's change. They had been stunned by what Xiao Bao had said as they stared who he was calling Jian Chen Dad so affectionately. All their thoughts had stopped. Only a long while later did Xiao Qian finally return to her senses. She would never have believed that Jian Chen was Xiao Bao's father. She thought Xiao Bao had called him the wrong name, so she quickly corrected him. "Xiao Bao, you should call Master Jian Chen brother or uncle and not dad. You can't use dad so casually." Xiao Bao clung tightly onto Jian Chen's neck. He felt like his father's bosom was even more comfortable than his mother's, as if his father had something that his mother lacked. "You're lying. He's clearly my dad, so I'm not going to call him big brother or uncle. I'm only going to call him Dad." "Only Dad," Xiao Bao pouted and unhappily replied to Xiao Qian. At this moment, Xiao Yu returned to her senses as well. She glanced past Jian Chen and Xiao Bao's faces and slowly became surprised. She said, "Xiao Qian, why do I feel like Xiao Bao and Master Jian Chen's appearances are similar in some areas?" With that, Xiao Qian immediately looked closer. Now that the two of them were together, she had indeed found them to be rather similar after comparing their appearances. Xiao Qian immediately became astounded. "Xiao Yu, now that you mention it, I feel like they just look far too similar as well. If it weren't for the fact that I know Xiao Bao's origins, would suspect, reaching there, Xiao Qian suddenly felt that there was something wrong. The two of them had heard about Xiao Bao's origins from their master and had no idea that Xiao Bao's true identity was different from what the heavenly enchantress had told them. Now that Xiao Bao constantly called Jian Chen Dad after seeing him and the fact that the two of them looked far too similar, just like father and son, she immediately sensed that something was wrong. Humph, Sister Xiaoqian, Sister Xiaoyu, you're actually working with Mum to trick me, telling me that I have no dad. I actually do have a dad. I've already found my dad, Xiao Bao said in irritation. Through his childish voice, his unhappiness for Xiao Qian and Xiao Yu was clearly disclosed. Even his arms around Jian Chen's neck tightened. Xiao Bao, is it really true? Is Master Jian Chen really? Xiao Yu covered her mouth as she stared at Xiao Bao and Jian Chen with widening eyes. Disbelief was spelt across her face as her heart churned. Humph, Xiao Bao's not a liar, and Dad has already given me a new name. It's Shangguan Aojian, Xiao Bao confidently replied. Impossible. That can't be true. Xiao Qian and Xiao Yu both became shocked. They refused to believe that Xiao Bao's father was Jian Chen. Who was his mother then? However, they already had an answer in their heads because of the way their master treated Xiao Bao, as well as the fact that the heavenly enchantress' gaze toward him would be filled with motherly love. They just refused to believe it. The heavenly enchantress returned to the island. She glanced over Xiao Qian and Xiao Yu with her enchanting eyes and sighed inside. She could already tell that Xiao Bao's true identity had been exposed from their expressions. Master, Xiao Bao's origins. Xiao Qian continued to look at the heavenly enchantress in disbelief in attempt to obtain an answer. The heavenly enchantress' gaze flickered and avoided them. At this moment, she was actually unwilling to meet her three disciples' eyes. She seemed very calm on the surface, but she was a complete mess down below. Xiao Qian, Xiao Yu, Qin, you are dismissed, the heavenly enchantress said coldly and emotionlessly. Xiao Qian and Xiao Yu both became wide-eyed. Although they never finished asking, their meaning was obviously conveyed very clearly. However, what really surprised them was that not only did their master avoid the topic, she was avoiding them as well. They had been with their master for many years, but this was the first time they had ever seen her like that. Senior Xiao Qian, Senior Xiao Yu, let's go. Qin went up to grab Xiao Qian and Xiao Yu's hands, pulling them away with her. Although the matter had never been confirmed, they already knew the answer inside. They just refused to believe it. The three of them vanished very quickly. The heavenly enchantress then coldly looked at Jian Chen. With a slight bit of anger in her eyes, she said, "What are you doing here?" At this moment, the heavenly enchantress was indeed extremely annoyed. Jian Chen's arrival was without warning and had actually exposed Xiao Bao's identity to her three disciples. She no longer knew how to face them in the future. I've obviously come to see my son. As a father, I have the responsibility to care for my child, smiled Jian Chen. He did not mind the heavenly enchantress' attitude at all. Dad, just stay here in the future. You can be with Mom every day, and I can see you every day as well, Xiao Bao said. His face was basically pressed against Jian Chen's while his hot breath tickled Jian Chen's cheek. Jian Chen felt deeply moved by Xiao Bao's eyes, which were brimming in hope. At that moment, he actually felt like he could not turn down Xiao Bao's request, tempted to just agree to it. After all, he had only learned he had a son when Xiao Bao was already 3 years old. He had never shown any love to Xiao Bao in the past and did not even know he had a son at all. He felt sorry for not knowing about Xiao Bao. However, Jian Chen had his reasons. He knew he could not, well at the very least, not right now. Xiao Bao, I can't spend every day with you right now because I have a lot of important things to attend to. However, I can promise you that once I deal with everything, I'll spend every day with you. All right? Jian Chen gently replied with eyes filled with love. All right, then I'll wait for you with Mum. Hey you. Yeah you. Another survey. Chapter 12:11, Newbies emerges. Jian Chen had come to Three Saint Island this time to visit Xiao Bao as well as deliver some cultivation resources to him. Xiao Bao was in possession of the innate chaotic body, so the resources he required were just as extravagant as what Jian Chen needed. When Jian Chen first began cultivating the chaotic body, he had the assistance of the sword spirits. They could refine ruler armaments into pure strands of chaotic force for him to absorb and pave the path of cultivation for him, allowing him to advance quickly. However, Xiao Bao was just too young even though he had the innate chaotic body. At the same time, he did not have sword spirits that could refine ruler armaments for him into chaotic force, so he could only use various resources like heavenly resources. Jian Chen never considered cultivation through absorbing the energy of the world. Chaotic force was different from ordinary energies. Refining a single strand would require tremendous amounts of energy. If he wanted to continue by absorbing energy of the world, he would advance extremely slowly even if it was 100 times more abundant in this world. Back then, Jian Chen had broken through to the first layer of the chaotic body by absorbing the energy that Shaoling had gathered after 100,000 years. Although all the energy was casually collected by Shaoling and not due to a certain method, it was still enough to give an idea of just how much energy Jian Chen had consumed to reach the first layer. In order for Xiao Bao to properly begin cultivating, Jian Chen pulled out 2 Class 9 monster cores, 10 Class 8 monster cores, and the other Class 7, 6, and 5 monster cores he had obtained from the Heaven's Incense School from his space ring. He also took out all the heavenly resources in his space ring. Jian Chen's space ring had suddenly become half empty after removing all those items, but he did not feel pained at all. Class 9 monster cores. You actually have Class 9 monster cores. Even the heavenly enchantress involuntarily made an outburst when she saw the monster cores. Class 9 monster cores could only appear within the bodies of Class 9 magical beasts that had reached the level of Saint Emperors. Even the remains of Saint Emperors could not match their value. They were basically items of legends on the Tian Yuan continent. Even with the heavenly enchantress' mental fortitude, she could not help but have a different expression when he pulled out 2 Class 9 monster cores in one stroke. What made the heavenly enchantress even more astounded was other than the 2 Class 9 monster cores, he had 10 Class 8 monster cores as well. Class 8 monster cores were basically non-existent on the continent, just like Class 9 monster cores where it was basically impossible to come across any. The heavenly enchantress began to suspect whether Jian Chen had robbed a protector clan when he pulled out so many monster cores in one stroke. This was because no organization could pull out so many high-class monster cores other than the 10 protector clans and mercenary city. Xiao Bao will consume extremely vast amounts of energy when he cultivates. These items should be enough to support him for a period of time. I'll pass them all to you, and I'll have to trouble you with looking after him. Jian Chen stored all the items into another space ring and passed it to the heavenly enchantress. He obviously would not give all these valuable items to Xiao Bao. He was still a child after all, and it would be a huge loss if he lost them. The heavenly enchantress did not turn down the space ring. She accepted it without saying anything more. Ever since Xiao Bao had obtained a cultivation method of the chaotic body from the sword spirits, she had witnessed the rate at which he consumed the heavenly resources. A 10,000-year-old heavenly resource would only take him an hour to fully absorb. The speed was terrifyingly fast. And after consuming so many 10,000-year-old heavenly resources, Xiao Bao did not undergo any significant changes. His dantian was still devoid of energy, which was more than enough to demonstrate just how vast the energy needed for the chaotic body was. The toughness of the chaotic body is nowhere near ordinary. Xiao Bao is in possession of the innate chaotic body, so he has some natural advantages. He will not suffer from any backlashes when consuming heavenly resources or refining monster cores, so you have no need to worry about Xiao Bao consuming heavenly resources and monster cores too quickly. Jian Chen explained more about the chaotic body to the heavenly enchantress, allowing her to have a rough understanding of Xiao Bao's constitution. Then when can Xiao Bao cultivate the chaotic force that you've mentioned? The heavenly enchantress asked. Although she was extremely unwilling to talk to Jian Chen, she still cared very much for her child. She needed to understand the chaotic force for her son. You need to forge and refine the chaotic body before cultivating chaotic force. Xiao Bao is still at the stage of forging, so all the energy will be absorbed by his body. After he completes this process, he will finally be able to cultivate chaotic force. You don't understand the chaotic body very much, so don't interfere with Xiao Bao's cultivation. He already has the cultivation method, so as long as he follows it, everything will obviously flow naturally, said Jian Chen. Jian Chen stayed on the island for most of the day before leaving. During that time, he basically explained everything regarding the constitution to Xiao Bao and also told him about his experiences and all his knowledge regarding cultivation he had gained over the years. Once Jian Chen left the island and stood above the sea, did he realize that he did not bring a Saint King with him. Without a Saint King, there would be no space gate, and he was over 10 million kilometers away from the Jessen Kingdom right now. If he flew, it would take him at least 10 days or half a month to get back. Do I have to go back and ask the heavenly enchantress to construct a space gate for me? Jian Chen frowned. He was troubled. There were some slight discrepancies in his relationship with the heavenly enchantress, so he really could not bring himself to return to ask her to send him back home. Jian Chen helplessly sighed as he stared at the boundless ocean. Just when he had no idea what he should do, the artifact spirit's voice rang through his head. His face immediately lit up in joy, and without any hesitation, he disappeared into the artifact space. Boom! Before Jian Chen could even make out his surroundings, he heard a deafening rumble. At the same time, a vast pressure that originated from the surroundings filled the space. A Saint-tier battle skill. Jian Chen shivered inside. He immediately understood that someone was using a Saint-tier battle skill from the vast pressure and that the user was powerful as well, at least a Saint King. Master, your friend who has always been studying the Saint-tier battle skill has emerged from seclusion. The artifact spirit appeared silently beside Jian Chen and politely informed him. As expected, a person shining with a golden, blinding light could be seen 1,000 meters away in the air. Above him, a serpent-like dragon swam about. Although the dragon was condensed from energy, it too shone with golden light and possessed a vast pressure. At this moment, the dragon roared at the sky before turning into a golden blur. It charged toward the ground at an unbelievable speed. Boom! With another rumble, the ground shook violently. Huge cracks littered the surroundings in 100 kilometers radius, while a 100-meter wide, bottomless hole appeared there. The golden dragon did not dissipate after producing such a shocking strike. It flew back as a golden streak of light, returning above the person's head. Ha ha ha, the great newbies, have finally succeeded. A crazy laugh rang through the surroundings and spread out in all directions. Even from 1,000 kilometers away, Jian Chen could clearly hear the arrogant and joyful voice. Hey you! Yeah you! Another survey. Chapter 12:12. Visiting the Bloodsword sect. Jian Chen could not help but smile. He was filled with joy inside as well. He had never thought that newbies, who had been locked up for several years and had been devoting all his time to studying a Saint-tier battle skill, would finally come out at this moment, and that he would have modified the Saint-tier battle skill into one that he could use himself. Jian Chen was happy for newbie's success. The pressure that permeated the surroundings shocked him in particular. Although he had not personally experienced a strike from the modified Saint-tier battle skill, he could tell from the presence alone that the battle skill was not weaker than an attack from a 7th heavenly layer Saint King. The huge golden dragon above newbies began to revolve quickly again. Pulses of energy rippled out as the pressure in the surroundings began to gradually increase. Jian Chen knew that newbies had not finished casting the skill when he felt this. Newbies was about to direct it toward the ground again. If Jian Chen was outside, he obviously would not do anything about it, but the artifact space was his territory. He did not wish for it to become a mess because of newbies, so he hurriedly yelled, "Newbies, stop. If you want to try the Saint-Tier battle skill, go outside. Don't do it here." Ha ha ha, Jian Chen. The great newbies, have finally succeeded in modifying that Saint-Tier battle skill for the sea race into one that's specific to me. This Saint-Tier battle skill has been modified according to myself, so no other human or magical beast can use it other than silver-striped golden snakes. Jian Chen, taste the power of the Saint-Tier battle skill. Newbies laughed aloud. He was extremely excited and proud. With that, the dragon above his head roared and shot toward Jian Chen like a golden streak of lightning. Jian Chen became stern. Newbies was a third heavenly layer Saint King, so Jian Chen actually felt pressured facing a battle skill from him. Not only had the golden dragon locked onto Jian Chen's presence, preventing him from dodging, even the space around him became thick. Not only did he feel like he was standing in treacle, a heavy pressure was also pressing against him from all directions as if a huge mountain lay above him. His mobility was greatly limited. Jian Chen's indifferent gaze became sharp in that moment. A great battle intent began to radiate from him. Although Jian Chen did not fear newbie's Saint-Tier battle skill, he was still cautious. Strands of chaotic force surged within him, quickly fusing into every inch of his flesh. Jian Chen used everything that his chaotic force could provide, forcefully pushing back the space around him by 3 inches. The Emperor armament had already appeared silently in his right hand. Violent and destructive chaotic force swirled around the sword. All that was left where Jian Chen had been standing was an afterimage now. He advanced instead of retreating, charging toward the golden dragon with an unstoppable force. Bang! With a great sound, Jian Chen collided with the golden dragon. A terrifying ripple of energy erupted in the form of a golden storm into the surroundings, dyeing the entire place a golden, dazzling light. The space at the center of the golden world violently trembled. It had turned into a blurry mess there. Even though the artifact space was much tougher than the outside world, it still ended up ripping open from their attacks. The golden energy slowly receded after a long while. Jian Chen stood upright where the golden dragon was before. His clothes had become rather messy and even slightly tattered, but his complexion remained the same, just as composed as before. The soul beneath him had already disappeared, now replaced by a 100-meter-wide ditch. He levitated in the air. Meanwhile, newbie's golden dragon had vanished. 1,000 meters away in the air, newbies blinked a few times and looked at Jian Chen in disbelief. He cried out, "How could that happen? My Saint-Tier battle skill was already at the level of 7th heavenly layer Saint Kings, and even a Saint King at that level would need to exert quite the effort to defend against it. How did break through it so easily? Jian Chen, what's your strength right now? Have you reached the 8th heavenly layer already?" Jian Chen put the Emperor armament away. He did not care about his clothes at all. He took a step and arriving by newbie's side instantly, he chuckled, "My strength is the same as yours, at the 3rd heavenly layer, but if I borrow the Emperor armament and use all I have, I should be able to display strength at the peak of the 7th heavenly layer. I understand the Saint-Tier battle skill I've modified extremely well. It needs a sliver of my essence to cast it, so its strength is incomparable to ordinary Saint-Tier battle skills. Even if your battle prowess is at the peak of the 7th heavenly layer, it's impossible for you to block my Saint-Tier battle skill so easily." Newbies pursued the matter. He still refused to believe that Jian Chen's strength was at what he had said. Jian Chen thought about it and added, "Maybe it's because of my chaotic force." Newbies gave a deep nod with that. He said, "The energy you use is weird. Looks like that's really the cause. Alright, let's not talk about this for now. Let's go out first. I just happen to have some problems I need your help with," said Jian Chen. Newbie's eyes lit up with that. "I never thought that I'd have to fight right after I get out. Let's hurry. I just happen to be in need of someone to try my Saint-tier battle skill on. Jian Chen shook his head speechlessly. Nubis sure was a battle freak to have thought that his problem was a powerful enemy. However, he did not give an explanation. He just left the artifact space with Nubis. Nubis looked around after he got out. Other than a small island in the distance, there was just the boundless ocean. Jian Chen, didn't you say you encountered some problems? Why don't I see any enemies? Nubis asked in confusion. He constantly looked around in search of something. Jian Chen rolled his eyes at Nubis. I think you've become confused after so many years of seclusion. My problem is something else, not a powerful enemy. What's your problem then? Nubis asked reflexively. He then looked toward the island far away and immediately understood something. I get it, Jian Chen. Let me guess. Does your problem have to do with the heavenly enchantress? Before Jian Chen could reply, Nubis continued as if that really was the case. You don't need to reply anymore. I already know that that's the case. Humph, to think that I was so afraid of that woman when I was still a saint ruler. That's the greatest embarrassment in my entire life. But who made her specialize in soul attacks? And who made magical beasts have a weak soul? Too bad that my strength has skyrocketed. My soul had been refined as well when I modified the Saint-tier battle skill. Both my strength and the power of my soul are no longer comparable to before, so I have no need to fear even if I have to face up against the heavenly enchantress who's skilled in soul attacks. Nubis could not help but feel bold when he spoke to that point. He said, let's go Jian Chen. Let's go to 3 Saint Island. Allow me, the great Nubis, to witness the soul attacks of the heavenly enchantress and regain the honor that I had lost back then. Nubis was about to fly toward 3 Saint Island when he said that. Jian Chen's heart jumped. He knew extremely well that it would be no different than seeking death if Nubis went to the island right now. He was not the heavenly enchantress opponent back then and was even less of an opponent now. Jian Chen grabbed Nubis' arm hurriedly and forcefully stopped him. He sternly said, Nubis, don't blame me for not warning you. The heavenly enchantress' strength right now is incomparable to the past. I think she's already reached the 9th heavenly layer of Saint King, and her zither attacks are even more terrifying. Jian Chen could not help but think back to when the heavenly enchantress had knocked out countless experts of the Protector Changyang clan with a single note. He was also certain that the heavenly enchantress had only played the zither casually. If she had used all she had, even Saint Kings would not have been able to resist the terrifying charm hidden within the notes. What? She's already reached the 9th heavenly layer. Nubis jumped in fright. He stared at Jian Chen in disbelief. A few days ago, she played a note casually and it led to the collapse of a powerful Protector clan. Are you still certain you want to do that? Jian Chen said. Nubis could not help but retract his head in fright as he looked at the island in fear. He was no longer bold enough to proceed with what he was going to do. Magical beasts possessed an innate advantage of a powerful body, such that their battle prowess exceeded humans at the same level. However, they were not without weaknesses either, and one of these weaknesses was the soul. As a result, Nubis was more willing to fight against powerful humans than those who could use soul attacks. Nubis, I may have the battle prowess of a Saint King, but my comprehension of the mysteries of the world remains at the 9th heavenly layer of Saint Ruler, so I can't rip open a space gate. I want to return to the Jesson Kingdom immediately, so just make a space gate for me. Only now did Nubis understand. Jian Chen's problem was not something he had thought of. Instead, it was the fact that he did not have the ability to construct a space gate to return home. Nubis was no longer willing to stay a moment later after learning how terrifying the heavenly enchantress was. He immediately created a space gate as quickly as he could, leaving with Jian Chen. Jian Chen and Nubis returned to the Jesson Kingdom together before summoning the 4 protectors of the Bloodsword sect. They directly proceeded to the Bloodsword sect under the lead of the 4 protectors. Rui Jin, He Yu, and Hong Lian stayed in the clan. They did not go with him, but they had already left a method of communication with Jian Chen. As soon as Jian Chen encountered an opponent he could not defeat, the three of them would hurry over as soon as they could. Yu did not go along either. Instead, she stayed in the Bright Moon Divine Hall to cultivate, working hard on increasing her own strength. She knew that she could only help Jian Chen with even more things once she was strong. Hey you. Yeah you. Another survey. Chapter 12-13, Return of the Bloodsword Sect. Jian Chen was only accompanied by the third heavenly layer Saint King Nubis on his journey to the Bloodsword Sect this time. Originally, they could have opened a space gate and arrived at the Bloodsword Sect through it, but unfortunately, neither Jian Chen nor Nubis knew the exact location of the sect, nor did they ever visit the place, so they did not know the exact location. As a result, they could only use the description from the four protectors to create a space gate several 100,000 kilometers away and fly the rest of the journey. Jian Chen and Nubis flew for an entire day and night under the lead of the four protectors before finally arriving where the Bloodsword Sect was located. To their surprise, the Bloodsword Sect was hidden in a small and extremely obscure valley within a huge, desolate mountain range. From the looks of it, the valley seemed rather similar to Longevity Valley where Uncle Xiao stayed. A village was present in the valley as well, except it was even more obscure than Longevity Valley. It was large as well, possessing over 2,000 wooden huts in a neat fashion. All of the huts were ordered in a pattern, but they varied in sizes. The huts at the edge were the smallest, and the closer to the center, the larger they became. A hall constructed from 10,000-year-old ironwood stood at the center. It contained 7 floors and took up several tens of thousand square meters. A dead silence loomed over the entire village when Jian Chen and Nubis saw it. There was not a single person there, nor was there any farmland in the surroundings. It could have been easily misunderstood as a ghost town. However, that was not what Jian Chen and Nubis believed. They had already sensed several powerful presences in the silent village, and the most powerful one had already reached Saint Emperor. Is this where the Bloodsword Sect is located? Jian Chen asked as he looked at the village. Sect Master, this is indeed where we are located. The disciples of the sect basically all stay in the huts to cultivate, and they don't usually come out unless there's something happening. It's very common for not a single person to emerge in half a month, explained a protector. I, the great Nubis, can tell that there are only 2,000 people in total with just a single glance. The Bloodsword Sect is one of the 3 great assassination organizations on the continent after all. They may have declined, but isn't there just too few people? Nubis curled his lips scornfully. His impression of the Bloodsword Sect immediately plummeted. Our sect has not declined. We've only gone into seclusion under the sect master's orders and never appear on the Tianyuan continent. We may have suffered heavy casualties from the battle 1,000 years ago, but we've recovered already after 1,000 years of recuperation. All the people here are the core disciples of our sect. All of them are elites. We have several tens of thousand other disciples outside, scattered and hidden across the entire continent, a protector explained emotionlessly. At this moment, a few people in red clothes flew over from the village, arriving before Jian Chen in just a few seconds. There were a total of 6 people. The leading person was an ordinary old man who seemed to be in his 70s. His vast presence allowed Jian Chen and Nubis to tell that he was a Saint King with a single glance and that he was the same as Nubis, at the 3rd heavenly layer. 2 people behind him were middle-aged men, while the other 3 were all old people. They were all at the 7th heavenly layer saint rulers at a minimum, and 2 of them were at the 9th heavenly layer. The vice sect master Jiang Wang and the 5 elders have come to greet the sect master. The old man at the very front gave a clear greeting and bowed toward Jian Chen. He had learned that Jian Chen had become the sect master long ago and was extremely familiar with Jian Chen. Jian Chen could tell that the vice sect master and the 5 elders were completely content with him taking up the position as sect master from their expressions. Jian Chen stepped up to help Jiang Wang rise and said, "There's no need to be so polite. I was fortunate enough to be favored by Uncle Xiao, which was why he passed the position as sect master to me, allowing me to take up the important matter of developing the Blood Sword sect. If there's anything that I do incorrectly in the future, please show me how it's done, Vice Sect Master. The sect master is too modest. Within the sect master possesses supreme authority. How could I correct you?" Jian Chen and Jiang Wang conversed politely out of courtesy before being invited into the village by Jiang Wang. The 5 elders and 4 protectors followed silently behind them. "Sect Master, all the people here are the core disciples of the sect. There are around 2,300 total, and the weakest are Earth Saint Masters. There are around 220 Heaven Saint Masters and 9 Saint Rulers in total, which would be the 4 protectors and the 5 elders. As for the Saint Kings, there is only me. Where we stay contains a powerful killing formation as well, formed from over 2,000 wooden huts. The control center for the formation would be the Blood God Hall in the very center, which is also the residence of the sect master. Other than the vice sect master, everyone else can only enter the place after receiving the approval of the sect master." Along the way, Jiang Wang constantly explained the situation of the Blood Sword sect to Jian Chen. He began from where they stayed before moving on to the outer disciples that were scattered outside, allowing Jian Chen to gain a clear understanding of the structure of the sect in the end. The structure was not complicated at all. In fact, it was extremely simple. The entire organization was controlled by the 5 elders. They all managed their own squadron of people. The vice sect master on the other hand possessed complete authority over the 5 elders while the sect master was an absolute existence in the sect. They could decide everything and anything for the sect. The next day, Jian Chen underwent the formal ceremony of taking up the position as sect master. The ceremony was very simple. It was hosted by the vice sect master, elders, and protectors, allowing all the core members to pay respects to the sect master. The first thing that Jian Chen did was hold a meeting after the ceremony. Currently, Jian Chen, Nubis, Jiang Wang, the 5 elders, and the 4 protectors gathered in a room enveloped by a barrier in the Blood God Hall. They all were stern. Jian Chen had changed into the special attire of the sect master. He wore blood-red, luxurious robes, which added a sense of maliciousness to his appearance. "Today, I have 2 important matters to announce in this meeting. The first thing is that the Blood Sword sect will return to the continent again," Jian Chen sternly informed them. He rarely issued orders, but his words were filled with absolute authority. Jiang Wang, the elders, and the protectors all lit up in joy, but no one said anything in response. Jian Chen continued, "The next matter will be wiping out the underworld sect." If the first matter had delighted the upper echelon of the Blood Sword sect, the second made them all ecstatic. In all these years, the 3 great assassination organizations had always been in conflict with one another. Countless smaller clashes had occurred in the past and their enmity had already reached an irreconcilable stage, especially when the Blood Sword sect waged a war that was unheard of against the Underworld sect and the Yama Hall. Back then, Houston's strength was absolute, and neither one of the 2 organizations were the opponent of the Blood Sword sect. In the end, the 2 organizations worked together, allowing them to face the Blood Sword sect in a life-or-death battle. The battle was extremely intense. Although the 2 organizations worked together, Houston's strength was still supreme and the Blood Sword sect was unstoppable. Under his lead, the Blood Sword sect still managed to suppress the 2 other organizations, pushing them toward the brink of destruction. In the end, the battle only stopped after Houston's wife was assassinated, and from then on, the Blood Sword sect vanished from the Tianyuan continent. During the 1,000 years, the entire sect had wanted to take revenge against the 2 assassination organizations several times, but they could do nothing due to the sect master's orders, much less appear on the continent, which was why they withheld their enmity for a whole millennia. Now that the new sect master had finally released them from that order, they were all ravished with joy. "Sect master, when will we be moving out?" An elder stood up and excitedly asked. "Since the order has been issued, the sooner we move, the better. I hope we can finish off Uncle Xiao's revenge as soon as possible." "Do you know where the underworld sect is located?" Jian Chen asked. "Sect master, the underworld sect is well hidden, but it is not hidden well enough to hide from the intelligence hall of the Bloodsword sect. We've looked into this before. All we need is an order from the sect master and then we can set off immediately," replied Jiang Wang. He had yearned for this day for a very long time already. "If that's the case, let's set out tomorrow morning. Go make preparations today. We will be in an intense battle tomorrow," Jian Chen heavily informed them. "Sect master, how many people will we be bringing?" an elder asked. "Vice sect master, elders, and protectors, you will be coming with me. There is no need to bring the people below Saint Ruler. But sect master, the underworld sect has a divine hall. They've always been hiding in it in the recent years, so we might not be able to break through the divine hall with our sect's strength," said an elder. "You don't need to worry about this. Divine halls are tough, but they are not indestructible." Jian Chen's voice was filled with confidence, but he sighed inside. By the looks of things, he needed to trouble Rui Jin and the others when he moved against the underworld sect. "Hey you! Yeah you! Another survey." Chapter 12-14, The President sighs. As one of the 7 capital cities on the continent, the City of God was bustling. Most of the people who strolled through the streets were rich merchants and the descendants of exceptional clans. Only once in a while would a few rough-looking mercenaries appear in the crowd. Not only was the City of God the territory of one of the 3 great clans that controlled the entire empire, the Tsar family, it was also the sanctuary of Radiant Saint Masters. Not only did most of the Radiant Saint Masters on the continent gather here, it was where all Class 7 Radiant Saint Masters lived. There were over 20 known Class 7 Radiant Saint Masters on the continent, and all of them had been bestowed a position as an elder of the Radiant Saint Master Union. A majestic castle stood quietly in the center of the city like a sleeping beast. It possessed a feeling like it had stood through many changes. The castle was snow-white, but it was aged, so it was not particularly bright in color. Traces of time were present on it. This castle was the headquarters of the Radiant Saint Master Union. On the 7th floor, the president, Adami, currently sat quietly on a throne in a beautifully adorned hall. His face was no longer as bright as before, now possessing traces of haggardness. Even his wrinkles had deepened, making him seem even older. "Esteemed President, Yilan wishes to see you." At this moment, a polite voice came from outside. "Sir, please come in," Adami gently replied. With a gentle wave of his right hand, a ball of milky white light flashed from it and the door opened silently. A man in tight-fitting robes walked in from outside. He only seemed to be in his early 30s since his dark eyes shone with vigor, like 2 pieces of obsidian. His handsome face possessed the weathering of wind and rain. "Esteemed President, I've led a group of people outside under your orders to find Master Yuntian, but there hasn't been any news of him even now." The young man clasped his hands at the president. Adami frowned and thought, Yuntian's already vanished for so many years. I really do wonder where he's gone. I've used a secret technique many times, but I still haven't been able to communicate with him. Has Yuntian suffered an accident? The president darkened when he thought of that possibility. Yuntian was his senior disciple. He had basically watched him grow up, so although they were just master and disciple, Adami had treated him as his own son. As a result, Adami felt rather sorrowful when he thought about how Yuntian may have suffered an accident. "Yilan, it's been tiring for you over the past few days. Go rest first. You don't need to search for Yuntian anymore." Adami waved his hand gently. He was rather dispirited. "President, you must look after yourself." "I shall bid farewell," Yilan said in concern before backing out quietly. Sigh. With Yilan's departure, Adami sat back and leaned against the wide and comfortable throne. At this moment, Adami could not help but think about some matters of the past. In his life, he had taken on 3 disciples in total. The first one had departed long ago due to old age, while the second one was Yun Tian, who he had watched grow up. As for his third disciple, it was something that he felt most prideful about. Both his first and second disciples were exceptional. They possessed an extremely great talent among radiant saint masters, but compared to his third disciple, the difference was just unsurmountable, because not only was his third disciple a Class 7 radiant saint master, he was also a supreme expert that could shake up the continent. His achievements as a fighter had already surpassed his abilities as a radiant saint master, already a famous saint king who even the 10 protector clans feared. Unfortunately, accidents occurred. The third disciple that Adami felt most pride for ended up taking away the saint artifact of the Union, almost causing the Union to collapse. Not only did it result in an irreversible loss, it also cut Adami off from the possibility of becoming a Class 8 Radiant Saint Master. Adami was nearing the end of his life. He originally had a total of 3,000 years, and he gained another 200 years through a 10,000-year-old heavenly resource, so he had 3,200 years in total. Over 3,100 years had already passed, so he only had a few decades left. Adami had never married in his life, and he was without children. He only had a few wishes as he neared his death. One was to see the Union become even more powerful and even more glorious if he could not become a Class 8 Radiant Saint Master, while the other was being sent off by his closest disciples. However, his final wishes had all become dreams now. Let alone becoming even more powerful and even more glorious, it was extremely fortunate that the Union had not collapsed. Being sent off by his closest disciples was even more impossible. His second disciple had been missing for many years, and no one knew whether he was still alive or not right now, while his third disciple's status was far from what it had been in the past. Even as the president of the Union, he could not form proper ties with him, let alone be sent off by him. "I've worked hard my entire life for the glory of the Union. I never thought that I would fail to see glory after over 2,000 years of work and that the Union would collapse in my hands. I am the offender of the Union," the president sighed at the sky. His voice trembled slightly and was filled with dreariness. Tears even pooled in his eyes. A tiny wooden hut stood all by itself on the peak of a mountain 10,000 kilometers from the city. Zar Kaiyun remained on the bed, eyes closed within the hut. She had been unconscious for many years already and had still not woken up. "Kaiyun, do you still remember when we first met each other in the City of God? Back then, I was only an Earth Saint Master, and I had been chased into the city by a villain. I was very heavily injured and my space ring had been stolen as well. I had nothing. I was hungry and thirsty. With no other choice, I stole a set of clean clothes from a small household before dragging my exhausted body to an inn where I had a hearty meal. In the end, when I received the bill, I was completely ready to be beaten black and blue, but you suddenly appeared in that crucial moment. Back then, you were so pretty as a fairy from heaven. I was deeply drawn in at first glance. Back then, I still didn't know who you were. Not only did you help me pay off my bill, you even noticed that I was very heavily injured with a single glance. You gave me an invaluable Class 6 Radiant Spirit pill and spoke with me for a long time. From that time on, I had become your friend. I still remember when you found out that I had been hunted down by a villain. You fell into an utter rage, which we then went together to find him. We killed him by working together." Hao Wu held Zar Cyan's hand as he gently recalled their first meeting. Reminiscence filled his eyes. In all the years Zar Kaiyun had been unconscious, he had stayed there, having not left for even a single moment. "Kaiyun, do you still remember our promise back then? You said that once we're strong enough, we'll live a life as wanderers and travel across the continent. Kaiyun, wake up. Let's go fulfill that promise. On a lone island several million kilometers away from the Tianyuan continent in the vast sea, a disheveled man in tattered clothes currently crouched down as he wolfed down a fish in his hands. I'll eat you. I'll eat you. Yes, yes. I'll eat you, Yang Yutian. I'll be eating you, eating your flesh, and drinking your blood. Ha ha ha, isn't it very painful? Cry out, cry out. Keep crying out, keep struggling. No matter how you struggle before I, Master Yun Tian, you will still become my prey in the end, the beggar-like person mumbled mindlessly as he gnawed the fish in his hands, laughing idiotically from time to time. With a plop, the water near the shore splashed and a 60-centimeter fish accidentally leaped ashore. It struggled furiously in an attempt to return to the water. The man's eyes immediately lit up. He tossed away the half-eaten fish and cried out at the same time, Yang Yutian, don't run away. As he said that, he lunged forward, pressing the fish that was just about to return to the water into the ground. The lower half of his face smashed into the rock underneath, causing him to bleed from his nose and mouth. However, he did not seem to be in pain. He spat out a mouthful of blood and 2 broken teeth as he laughed in a deranged fashion, I caught you, Yang Yutian. Let's see how you run now. In front of me, you can't escape no matter how great you are. I want to eat your flesh and drink your blood. He used his hands to grab the fish under him. The fish immediately began to struggle desperately, rapidly opening and closing its mouth. Yun Tian became even more excited when he saw this. He laughed aloud, Yang Yutian, never did you think that you would end up like this. Struggle, struggle desperately. Call out miserably. Go on, do it. Plead for your life. Plead me to spare your life. I might just spare your life. Yang Yutian, why aren't you saying anything? Why aren't you pleading? Talk, go on, talk. Okay, Yang Yutian. You're not going to talk. Since you're not going to talk, don't blame me. I'll bite you to death. As he said that, Yun Tian opened his bloodied mouth to viciously bite the fish. His 2 broken teeth could clearly be seen. Hey you. Yeah you. Another survey. Chapter 12-15, Wiping Out the Underworld Sect, 1. When the Beast God continent had launched a large-scale invasion of the Tianyuan continent because of the Winged Tiger God, they were obstructed by the experts of the Tianyuan continent before an agreement was reached. Thus, the experts all temporarily settled down on an island. Afterward, Yun Tian left the Union and the continent with news regarding the Winged Tiger God, wanting to find the experts to tell them that the Winged Tiger God was with Jianchen and, hence, cause problems for him. However, Yun Tian fainted from exhaustion after flying for a few days. Just as he was about to drown, a magical beast happened to pass by. The magical beast scooped him from the water and brought him to the island. After learning about the Winged Tiger God from Yun Tian, the experts of the Beast God continent set off for the Tianyuan continent again while Yun Tian was left on the island. Yun Tian was unable to make the journey because the island was extremely far away from the continent, he had no idea in which direction to travel, and he was not strong enough for the journey, so he ended up trapped there. At the very beginning, Yun Tian was still able to keep his sanity, but after quite some time, he could no longer bear it and was eventually reduced to his current shape. Jian Chen led the vice sect master, the 5 elders, and the 4 protectors the morning of the next day. They headed to where the underworld sect was located. Newbies obviously followed along as well. Jiang Wang had searched for the exact hiding location of the underworld sect himself, so he had left down marks from back then. They arrived where the underworld sect was located through a space gate created by the vice sect master. It was located in a yellow world, sand as far as the eye could see. The burning sun hung high in the air and radiated with an intense heat, baking the earth until it was scorching hot. Jian Chen, Nubis, Jiang Wang, the 5 elders, and the 4 protectors all levitated in the sky at ease. They gazed at the ground from above. The severe conditions of the desert did not affect them at all. Sect Master, in order to prevent the experts of the underworld sect from sensing us, I've chosen to construct the space gate 1,000 kilometers away. There's a region of loose sand up ahead. The divine hall of the underworld sect is hidden beneath the loose sand, Jiang Wang explained to Jian Chen. Jian Chen immediately looked ahead and nodded slightly. He said, "Let's go." With that, the group set off. The weakest among them were the 4 protectors, who were saint rulers at the 5th heavenly layer, so all of them possessed a rather deep comprehension of space. As a result, they moved extremely quickly, crossing 1,000 kilometers in less than 5 minutes. Jian Chen immediately extended his presence into the ground when he arrived above the region of loose sand. Indeed, he discovered a huge divine hall standing silently underneath the sand. Jian Chen's eyes grew cold. Of the 2 organizations that had murdered Uncle Xiu's wife all those years ago, the Yama Hall had already been devastated by him. All that was left was the underworld sect. Jian Chen did not hesitate. A powerful killing intent surged out of him into the surroundings while the Emperor armament silently appeared in his hand. A dark mist coiled around the weapon, giving off the violent presence of destruction. Jiang Wang and the 5 elders shivered inside. Jian Chen's killing intent was enough to make them tremble in fear, allowing them to finally witness Jian Chen's strength. All of them sighed, the rumors were true. Although they had heard about Jian Chen's strength, they learned about it from the rumors of the Tianyuan continent. None of them had any idea just how many of the rumors were fake. Jian Chen swung his sword and a black sword chi an arm thick shot through the air like a bolt of lightning. It disappeared into the loose sand below in a single instant. The sword chi possessed the might of a 7 heavenly layer Saint King, so it shot toward the divine hall 100 meters below. Although it was nowhere near enough to break through the divine hall, it was enough to shake it. The divine hall shook violently, alarming all the people within it. The next moment, a black figure shot out of it with lightning-like speed, emerging with a powerful presence. It faced against Jian Chen's group. It was a person completely shrouded by black robes. The figure's appearance was completely obscured, making it impossible to distinguish whether the figure was a man or a woman. The figure bore the presence of a 5th heavenly layer Saint King. "Who are you? Why are you provoking my underworld sect?" The shrouded person questioned in a heavy, hoarse voice, again, making it impossible to distinguish their gender. "Ha ha ha, Luo Qi, isn't your memory a little too horrible? It's only been 1,000 years, yet you've forgotten your old friends," sneered Jiang Wang. "It's you, Jiang Wang. You're all people from the Blood Sword sect." The shrouded person's voice was filled with shock. It continued, "Hasn't the Blood Sword sect stepped back from the continent and no longer bothers with any matters that have to do with the continent? I wonder why you've come with such a great party then. Luo Qi, this is the new sect master of our Blood Sword sect. By the orders of the sect master, we have returned, and you, the underworld sect, will be an offering for our return," laughed Jiang Wang. "Humph, you still don't have the right to wipe out my underworld sect," sneered the shrouded figure. Its voice was filled with disdain. "It's still not up to you to decide whether we have the right or not," Jian Chen coldly replied. He took a step and arrived by the side of the shrouded figure, stabbing his emperor armament at the person's head. The shrouded figure was secretly shocked when it sensed the strength of Jian Chen's attack. However, it did not move slowly at all. Vast amounts of darkness attributed saint force surged from a palm, immediately condensing into a small, black dagger. Without retreating at all, they dodged Jian Chen's sword while the dagger lashed out like a calm viper, soundlessly stabbing toward the center of Jian Chen's forehead as a black streak of light. The corner of Jian Chen's lips curled up in disdain. Rotating his wrist, he redirected the sword toward the figure's head. If Jian Chen's first strike possessed speed that was nothing spectacular, the second attack was unbelievably fast. A pitch-black crack formed wherever the sword swept past. The shrouded figure was surprised inside. Jian Chen's attack was just too fast, so fast that as a fifth heavenly layer Saint King, the figure had almost failed to react. It was already too late to dodge, so without any other choices, the figure could only redirect the dagger to parry the Emperor armament. A boom immediately erupted when the two weapons clashed. A powerful ripple of energy spread out with the two of them as the epicenter, wreaking havoc in all directions as a wave. Jian Chen's strike possessed the strength of a seventh heavenly layer Saint King, so how could the shrouded figure block it? The figure was immediately sent into a rapid retreat. The strength of the new sect master is so powerful, actually at the seventh heavenly layer. There's no one in the sect that his opponent other than the former sect master, who's in seclusion. The shrouded person was secretly astounded. It immediately abandoned the battle, quickly charging underground. As long as the figure made it back to the Divine Hall, it would be invincible. However, a bone-chilling event hit the person just as they moved. Jian Chen arrived by their side like a ghost while the black light on the Emperor armament surged, stabbing out again with lightning-like speed. The tip of the sword was less than 3 inches away from the person's forehead. They could even feel a stabbing pain from the figure's soul at such a close range, as if his or her soul was about to be ripped into pieces. The shrouded figure paled in fright. Other than Houston 1,000 years ago, this was the first time it had ever felt so close to death. At this crucial moment, the person spat out a mouthful of thick, black mist and yelled, "Darkness art, afterimage clone." Jian Chen's Emperor armament stabbed into the person's head as soon as the figure yelled. However, Jian Chen did not rejoice and instead frowned. His sword failed to land. Bang! As soon as that thought crossed Jian Chen's mind, the black figure exploded loudly. It turned into dense black mist, quickly expanding and engulfing Jian Chen. The mist was no ordinary mist, but formed from darkness-attributed saint force. Even Jian Chen's visibility was severely limited within the mist. Suddenly, a small, black dagger appeared silently behind him. The dagger had completely fused with the mist, so it was extremely difficult to sense no matter how sharp Jian Chen's senses were. However, Jian Chen suddenly turned around just as the dagger was about to stab him. He swung his Emperor armament without any hesitation and the chaotic force on the weapon cleaved through the space. The stroke was extremely powerful, enough to affect the space in the region of 100 meters, causing it to violently pulse. Arg! With a painful cry, a bloodied hand fell out of the sky with the dagger before it could deal a fatal strike to Jian Chen. Not only did the shrouded person fail to assassinate Jian Chen in the mist, that figure even lost an arm. The mist slowly dispersed and Jian Chen gradually appeared before everyone. However, the shrouded figure had already disappeared. The vice-sect master and the 5 elders could not help but feel relieved when they saw Jian Chen perfectly fine. Although they knew that he was very powerful, the opponent this time was an expert of the underworld sect who was skilled in assassination techniques. There was the threat of dying with the slightest carelessness. "Sect master, are you alright? Where's Luo Qi?" Jiang Wang arrived beside Jian Chen and asked about his well-being. Jian Chen was calm and composed. He gently shook his head. "He's still not enough to pose a threat to me, but he sure ran pretty quickly." After severing his arm, he immediately fled into the sand and into the Divine Hall. Jian Chen put it lightly, but Jiang Wang and the 5 elders were all secretly stunned. A 5th heavenly layer Saint King of the underworld sect, skilled in assassination, was actually not enough to pose a threat to him, which convinced them of his strength again. At this moment, Jiang Wang and the 5 elders all agreed inside that Jian Chen was even more powerful than the rumors. "Hey you! Yeah you! Another survey. Chapter 12:16, Wiping Out the Underworld Sect. 2. Suddenly, the sand underneath began to violently churn. A divine hall shot out, slowly emerging with a vast presence. "That's the darkness divine hall of the underworld sect," Jiang Wang immediately cried as he watched the giant divine hall slowly emerge from the sand. He became stern. Although he knew that Jian Chen had a method to break through it, its tough defenses still pressured him on a psychological level. This was because if they could not smash through it, they would not be able to touch the assassins hiding inside, and a Saint Emperor's power was required to smash through it. Every single divine hall on the Tianyuan continent was created by Saint Emperors, so they possessed the power of Saint Emperors. Although this power could not be used to harm those outside the divine hall, it was the structure's strongest defense. It was not something that Saint Kings could break through even if they were at great perfection. "My underworld sect has existed for over 100,000 years on the Tianyuan continent, so how can we be wiped out by you, the mere bloodsword sect? Even with Houston's supreme strength 1,000 years ago, you still didn't have the power to wipe us out, so I'd like to see just how you will finish us off today." Luo Qi's furious voice rang from the divine hall. Under Luo Qi's control, the divine hall rapidly expanded before arriving above Jian Chen and the others. It shot down with its great presence. Jian Chen coldly smiled. A piece of jade had silently appeared in his hand, and by tightening his grip slightly, the jade piece was crushed into pieces. "Sect Master, let's retreat," Jiang Wang suggested from beside Jian Chen before quickly retreating with the 5 elders and 4 protectors in attempt to escape the area covered by the divine hall. Although the structure did not possess any offensive capabilities, none of them wanted to be pressed into the sand. However, just when they had retreated by a few dozen meters and had yet to make it out, spatial force suddenly appeared near Jian Chen. 10 meters away from him, the space violently rippled and it ripped open, forming a multicolored space gate. A vast pressure flooded out of the space gate the moment it formed, filling up the surroundings. The air around seemed to have stopped moving because of the vast pressure and became thick. The group of experts from the Blood Sword sect all froze as well. Other than Jiang Wang, who was at the 3rd heavenly layer of Saint King, the elders and protectors felt like they were suffocating before the pressure. They felt like they had lost the ability to breathe. Jiang Wang and the elders were shocked while the 4 protectors maintained their composure. The pressure had greatly exceeded their former sect master's aura, making them believe that they were facing a Saint Emperor. The structure continued to rapidly descend as it grew closer from above, blotting out the sun like a dark cloud. As that happened, Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu emerged side by side from the space gate. They noticed the divine hall in the sky as soon as they arrived, and a sliver of scorn immediately appeared in their eyes. Rui Jin slowly raised his hand and held up the divine hall with his right hand. With a creak, Rui Jin's hand actually forced the divine hall to suddenly halt from its descent, as if the huge divine hall was being held up by Rui Jin with a single hand. The eyes of Jiang Wang, the elders, and the protectors all narrowed at this sight. Stopping a divine hall with a single hand was not something a Saint King at great perfection could accomplish. The 6 of them had all become stunned by the supreme strength Rui Jin had displayed. Although they had heard rumors that Jian Chen possessed 3 experts who were no weaker than Saint Emperors by his side, they were still rumors after all. They thought the rumors had all been exaggerated, but what they were witnessing today validated the rumors. One of them could stop the descent of a divine hall with a single hand and appear as though they were at ease. With their understanding, only Saint Emperors could do something like that. Other than the 4 protectors who had already seen the trio's strength, all the other people's opinions of Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu underwent a drastic change. They all looked at them with unhidable respect. At this moment, Rui Jin's hand suddenly jerked and a thunderous creak immediately appeared. The divine hall was actually thrown high up into the air with just a jerk of his hand. "Saint Emperors? You're Saint Emperors? Impossible, this is impossible. Other than the Path Lord of the Carnal Desires, there is no second Saint Emperor on the Tian Yuan continent. Luo Qi's terrifying voice rang out of the Divine Hall, but something seemed to cross his mind very soon. Luo Qi cried out uncontrollably, I know. You're the three magical beast experts that follow the captain of the flame mercenaries. No one paid any attention to Luo Qi even though he was a fifth heavenly layer Saint King. At the same time, a dazzling streak of golden light suddenly appeared. Ruo Jin had already drawn the sacred dragon sword. Holding it above his head, his presence rapidly skyrocketed. He then chopped at the structure. With that attack, a 100-meter golden sword Qi directly appeared. It possessed origin energy, an energy that could only be controlled by sovereign-like existences that had surpassed Saint Emperor and stepped into the origin realm. Even Saint Emperors needed to avoid it. The huge sword Qi landed on the Divine Hall, and it immediately rumbled loudly. The entire structure violently shook before splitting in half while Jian Chen and the others were filled with disbelief. The Divine Hall had actually been chopped in half with a single stroke from Ruo Jin. Impossible. This is impossible, Luo Qi cried out in disbelief. The Divine Hall had been what the underworld sect relied on the most. It was also their greatest trump card in regards to protecting themselves, but someone had actually split the structure in half, such that their terrifying might utterly frighten Luo Qi. Hong Lian and He Yu stared at the falling ruined Divine Hall in secret shock. Although the two of them could smash through the Divine Hall with their origin energy weapons, they could not have done it as easily as Ruo Jin, who had split the whole thing in half with a single attack. Ruo Jin, you must be close to breaking through. Hong Lian suddenly turned her head to Ruo Jin. A red light danced in her eyes like flames. Ruo Jin put away the weapon and indifferently replied, I've already touched that barrier. I believe I can become a Saint Emperor within 50 years. Jian Chen was surprised by that. His face immediately became filled with joy. He emotionally asked, Senior Ruo Jin, you're about to become a Saint Emperor? Ruo Jin smiled at how excited Jian Chen had become. He said, the reason why the current world lacks Saint Emperors is all because of the lack of origin energy. My sacred dragon sword and sacred dragon's armor possess it, so breaking through obviously won't be a problem. It's the same for Hong Lian and He Yu. It's just a matter of time. Jian Chen sucked in a deep breath and slowly calmed himself down, but he found it difficult to suppress the joy inside. It was as if he had already witnessed the moment when all three of them became Saint Emperors, a moment that would happen in a few decades. Boom! Boom! At this moment, two rumbles rang out nearby. The Divine Hall no longer possessed the power to remain levitating after being split in half by Ruo Jin, so it landed in the sand. Countless black-robed assassins quickly charged out from the ruined Divine Hall, fleeing into the distance as quickly as they could. None of them are allowed to escape. Kill! Jian Chen's eyes grew cold, and he immediately ordered the experts of the Bloodsword sect to attack before using the illusory flash to arrive atop the ruined structure. His Emperor armament turned into a cascade of afterimages as he stabbed at the assassins that slipped out of the structure, killing over 10 people in the blink of an eye. Jiang Wang, the elders, and the protectors hunted down the assassins that fled in all directions. Although they were saint rulers or even saint kings who could not commit enormous massacres, they still hunted down the assassins in order to wipe out the underworld sect. And even if celestial decay would occur after killing far too many people, that would only happen if hundreds of thousands or even more people were slaughtered. The underworld sect was only a few thousand people and every single one of them had hands dyed with blood. They had even less need to worry about celestial decay with that. Now that the item that the underworld sect relied on the most was gone, all the assassins were greatly affected at a psychological level. Every single one of them became dejected and lost the courage to battle. As soon as they made it out of the Divine Hall, they would immediately charge off into the distance. Jiang Wang, the elders, and the protectors used everything they had to kill the fleeing assassins. Since all those below Saint Ruler were ants, even the Heaven Saint Masters had no power to fight back against Saint Ruler abilities. With a single thought, a Saint Ruler could freeze a region of space and trap several assassins of the underworld sect there before easily killing them off. At this moment, over 10 assassins from the underworld sect, dressed in the same attire, charged out of the Divine Hall by concealing themselves in groups of people. As soon as they made it outside, they fused with the surrounding space, fleeing at an unbelievable pace as a blur. It's the Saint Rulers of the underworld sect. Don't let any of them escape. Jiang Wang exclaimed. He gave up on the Heaven Saint Masters he had immobilized with his frozen space and chased after a 9th heavenly layer Saint Ruler. The elders and protectors gave up on their small fry as well, all chasing after the fleeing Saint Rulers. Rui Jin suddenly formed a seal with his hands and called out, "Secret technique of the Dragon Clan, Dragon's Domain." With that, a halo of golden light rapidly expanded from Rui Jin, covering the surroundings with unbelievable speed. It covered over 1,000 kilometers in the blink of an eye. The region within a radius of over 1,000 kilometers became slightly golden. This was Rui Jin's Dragon's Domain, which turned a certain region of the surrounding space into his own domain. Other than Hong Lian, Rui Jin, Jian Chen, newbies, and the people of the Bloodsword sect, all the people in the space felt like they had suddenly been trapped by an invisible force, making them move much slower. They felt like they were in treacle. Only the Saint Rulers could resist this slowing effect with their full strength. All those below Saint Ruler were completely immobilized. Hey you! Yeah you! Another survey. Chapter 12-17, Ancient Teleportation Formation. Rui Jin's Dragon's Domain had already engulfed a radius of 1,000 kilometers, but it had only been a few seconds since the Divine Hall of the Underworld sect had been destroyed. In such a short amount of time, even Saint Rulers could not traverse 1,000 kilometers, so all the assassins were trapped in the domain as soon as it formed. No one managed to flee successfully. Jiang Wang and the 5 protectors had all caught up with the Saint Rulers now and began a great fight with everything they had. All the Saint Rulers of the Underworld sect used darkness-attributed Saint Force, so they all used secret techniques to morph into dense, black mist as soon as the battle began. They engulfed a certain range, silently moving through the mist in search of an opportunity to deal a sneak attack on their enemies. The Saint Rulers of the Underworld sect mainly used their darkness-attributed Saint Force to assassinate their targets, while the Bloodsword sect used Balefulline Force as their trump card. All the assassination organizations used unique techniques. However, none of them used Balefulline Force in their fight against the Saint Rulers of the Underworld sect. Balefulline Force was refined through slaughter, so it was just too valuable to Saint Rulers. Even though that was the case, the experts of the Bloodsword sect gained the upper hand since they were unaffected by the Dragon's Domain and, hence, at a complete advantage. On the other hand, the Saint Rulers of the Underworld sect struggled to use 70 to 80% of their power under the restraint of the Dragon's Domain. Bang! Jiang Wang casually struck the head of a Saint Ruler with his hand, blowing the head up on the spot and wiping out the soul. At the same time, a 9th heavenly layer elder killed his opponent as well. A blood-red spike passed through the forehead of his enemy before emerging from the other side. It completely passed through the person's head and dissipated his opponent's soul before he could flee. Jian Chen did not take part in the battle and instead stood with newbies. He constantly looked around with sharp eyes. He planned on leaving all the Saint Rulers to Jiang Wang and the elders. He would not bother with personally dealing with those who were weaker. Odd, Jian Chen. Why don't I see that dude with the arm you took? Newbie stood beside Jian Chen with his arms crossed as he constantly looked around, searching. Jian Chen frowned slightly. He too had been waiting for Luo Qi this entire time, but he still had not seen Luo Qi flee from the Divine Hall. Although the Divine Hall was now ruined, the power inside had yet to dissipate completely, so his presence could not enter the structure. Perhaps Luo Qi is still hiding within the Divine Hall? Jian Chen mumbled to himself. Although all the assassins that fled from the Divine Hall wore the exact same thing, none of them could escape his presence. He did not find Luo Qi at all. "I'll enter the Divine Hall and have a look," said Jian Chen before entering the ruins. Newbies followed him in as well. The Divine Hall was pitch black inside. The darkness-attributed Saint Force was extremely dense. For those who used darkness-attributed Saint Force, cultivating inside would have been extremely effective, but the structure was now destroyed, so the Saint Force was slowly dissipating. The power of the Divine Hall dispersed rapidly as well. Jian Chen stood with newbies in the dark structure. He frowned slightly because their visibility was limited to 5 meters due to the darkness. "Humph, do you think darkness-attributed Saint Force is enough to stop me, the great newbies?" Newbies sneered. He then immediately began to shine with a dazzling, golden glow. He was like a miniature sun in the Divine Hall where the Saint Force dispersed as soon as it came in contact with the light. In the blink of an eye, the Divine Hall cleared up. They were inside a well-adorned hall. It was empty, only possessing a few valuable decorations. Jian Chen ignored the decor and looked around. He said, "Luo Qi must be hiding in this Divine Hall. Let's look around first. We can't let him escape, or it'll cause endless future problems. We have the 3 seniors watching guard outside, so we don't need to worry about Luo Qi fleeing from another exit while we're in here." Jian Chen and newbies began to look through the Divine Hall. There was still some residual power of the Divine Hall in the surrounding walls, obstructing Jian Chen's presence. As a result, they could only search slowly. Along the way, Jian Chen came across quite a few tunnels that had been hidden by walls as well as formations that were concealed everywhere. However, they were all smashed through by the 2 of them. The toughness of the Divine Hall and the formations inside were supported by the Divine Hall's power, so as it slowly dissipated, both the walls and formations weakened greatly. At this moment, in an extremely well-hidden room within the Divine Hall, a shrouded person, who was missing an arm, stood with a short old man. The old man was rather pale, but his eyes shone with vigor. "Luo Qi, there's already been 2 people who've entered the Divine Hall. It probably won't take them long to arrive here. We need to leave as soon as possible," the old man said softly and indifferently. "Former sect master, we're not going to bother with the other people of the sect?" Luo Qi asked hoarsely. "They can destroy the Darkness Divine Hall with a single strike, so they must be at the level of Saint Emperors. Against such opponents, I wouldn't even have the power to fight back even if I was at my peak." "Humph, this Balefulline force sure is powerful. I was injured by Houston's Balefulline force 1,000 years ago. My soul still hasn't recovered after 1,000 years of resting," the old man coldly stated. He was still filled with much hatred. "All the people of the Bloodsword sect are outside right now as well as the 3 terrifyingly powerful magical beasts. We'll definitely be discovered if we go out, so how should we leave?" Luo Qi asked. "I already understand the situation outside. An expert has already cast an absolute secret technique to engulf the surrounding radius of 1,000 kilometers. We definitely can't go outside, but we still have one thing we've been holding back, or we'll probably end up dead today," the short old man spoke in a heavy voice. Darkness-attributed Saint Force surged from his feet into the ground. Gradually, an extremely complicated formation appeared beneath them. "This is a space gate. Can we leave through a space gate in the Divine Hall? Isn't it impossible to rip open space in the Divine Hall?" Luo Qi asked doubtfully. The short old man coldly smiled with that, "This is no space gate, but an ancient teleportation formation. It was accidentally obtained by the sect several tens of thousand years ago, and it was cast here to prepare for the day when we suffer devastating attacks from enemies. It can allow us to avoid this disaster, and once it's used, the formation will shatter by itself. There's no need to worry about people following our tracks. Luo Qi rejoiced inside. He said, "Let me go get the Saint Tier battle skill first and then we can leave. There's not enough time. The two of them are already close, so we need to leave immediately. Otherwise, we won't be able to leave if they destroy the formation," replied the old man. The teleportation formation was activated very quickly. With a violent rippling of space, the two of them disappeared. Several hundred meters away, Jian Chen and Nubis continued to search, headed in the direction of the room. The Divine Hall's power was much thinner than before, so Jian Chen's presence could pass through a few obstructions with some difficulty. When Luo Qi and the old man left through the teleportation formation, Jian Chen's expression changed. He could suddenly feel an extremely minute rippling of space, so he quickly ran in the direction without a second thought. Boom! Jian Chen cut down the entrance with a single stroke after arriving outside the room. The rippling of space that filled the room became even more intense now that the door was gone, but there was not a single person in it, only a destroyed formation on the ground. Jian Chen sighed when he saw the formation. "We've come too late. They've already left. I never thought they could leave through a space gate in the Divine Hall." Nubi's face became rather sunken. He knew exactly what it meant for a fifth heavenly layer Saint King to flee. Their future problems would be unending once they decided to take revenge, and it would become an extremely annoying situation, let alone the fact that the person who escaped was a Saint King assassin. "Jian Chen, what do we do?" Nubi's complexion became rather ugly. He had already become great friends with Jian Chen since what had happened in the past, so he obviously treated Jian Chen's business as his own. Jian Chen furrowed his brows in thought before relaxing soon after. His greatest worry was the Changyang clan and his friends in the Flame Mercenaries, but the Changyang clan was now protected by Changyang Zhu Yunxiao, who was basically on par with a Saint King at great perfection, so the clan were basically impregnable. He planned on asking Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu to look over the Flame Mercenaries. Yu could help as well, so he would no longer have to worry about Bai Lian and the others' safety once the Bright Moon Divine Hall was present. Afterward, Jian Chen and Nubis began to search the Divine Hall. They found a huge stone tablet lodged into a stone wall in a neighboring room. What surprised Jian Chen was that it was actually a complete Saint Tier battle skill. Jian Chen began to remove the stone tablet from the wall without any hesitation. Only after a tremendous amount of effort did he finally succeed in removing the tablet. It was only 5 meters long, but it was exceptionally heavy, countless times heavier than metal. Even with Jian Chen's current strength, he needed to use quite some power to lift it up. The Saint Tier battle skill recorded in the stone tablet was a fist technique, which was unsuitable for Jian Chen. Jian Chen walked a different path of cultivation from the people of the Tianyuan continent, so he could not practice Saint Tier battle skills. He threw the tablet into the artifact space, planning to get the elites in there to comprehend the Saint Tier battle skill after they became Saint rulers. Chapter 12-18, Proceeding to the Ice Goddess Hall. 1. Jian Chen and Nubis searched through the Darkness Divine Hall again after removing the Saint Tier battle skill, but it was a pity that they did not obtain anything else. Jian Chen was still very satisfied, however, since a complete Saint Tier battle skill was the greatest item he could have found. Jian Chen and Nubis left the Darkness Divine Hall and returned to the other people's side. They saw that the experts of the Bloodsword sect had already been waiting for quite some time, as they had already killed off the several thousand assassins of the Underworld sect. "Sect Master, where's Luo Qi? And the Sect Master of the Underworld sect, Gu Zhen? I suspect that he's still alive and probably hiding somewhere in the Divine Hall," Jiang Wang asked courteously. He felt rather surprised when he did not see Luo Qi's corpse. "They've fled. I never thought that they hit a space gate in the Divine Hall," Jian Chen said with some regret. Rui Jin furrowed his brows slightly with that. He said, "In my dragon's domain, space gates can't form at all. How can they flee through a space gate? I'll go check out the place where they used that space gate. Rui Jin entered the ruined divine hall with that while Jian Chen and the others followed behind. In the room Luo Qi and the old man had fled from, Rui Jin, Hong Lian, He Yu, Jian Chen, and the others stood around, examining the formation on the floor. This isn't a space gate. Hong Lian fixedly stared at the formation on the ground and realized that there was something wrong very quickly. Fixed space gates were similar to the formation on the ground, but there was an extremely clear difference between the two. Correct. This isn't a space gate, but an ancient teleportation formation. I never thought that something like this would be here. No wonder they managed to flee my dragon's domain, said Rui Jin. An ancient teleportation formation? Jian Chen murmured. He was filled with curiosity, and even Jiang Wang and Nubis became doubtful. Rui Jin explained, I've only found information regarding the teleportation formation from my inherited memories. These formations only appeared in ancient times and were extremely valuable. Not only do they have similar uses as space gates, able to teleport a certain number of people or things, they're completely unaffected by the surrounding space, so they can be used even in heavily distorted or even shattered space. The teleportation distance is extremely far away as well and can break through all limitations of space. They are far more powerful than space gates. But according to my inherited memories, even in ancient times, these formations were extremely rare. No one knows their origins, and there was no one who could make them because the requirements for creating one were just far too great. You would need to reach an utmost mastery with formations and then possess an extremely great comprehension of space. No one could fulfill these two requirements in ancient times, especially in regard to the comprehension of space. Even the level of Saint Emperors was nowhere near enough. The teleportation formations from ancient times seem to have appeared out of nowhere and were slowly used up. I never thought I'd actually see one today. I never thought that the underworld sect would actually be in possession of such a valuable teleportation formation. Looks like they were not fated to die today. Jian Chen thought. After learning about the teleportation formation, he knew that it was impossible to stop them from getting away today. The former sect master of the underworld sect, Gu Zhen, is still likely to be alive. Looks like he left with Luo Qi. I just wonder if Gu Zhen has fully healed from his wounds and whether he's made any improvements in his cultivation. 1,000 years ago, Gu Zhen was an 8th heavenly layer Saint King, so if he did, that would be troublesome, Jiang Wang worried. Vice Sect Master, don't worry. Uncle Xiao has handed the Blood Divine Hall to me. I'll give you control of the Divine Hall, so even if the Sect Master makes a full recovery, he won't be able to do anything to you with the Divine Hall, said Jian Chen. They did not stick around for long, leaving the desert very quickly. All the space rings from the assassins were handed to Jian Chen as well, but Jian Chen only glanced through them. He passed them all to Jiang Wang after seeing that there was nothing that he needed in them. Although there were quite a decent amount of wealth in all the space rings, money no longer held any true value to Jian Chen. Jian Chen did not return to the base of the Blood Sword sect. After handing over the Divine Hall he had obtained from Uncle Xiao, he went to the Changyang clan with Rui Jin and the others. Since they had already confirmed that at least 2 Saint Kings had managed to flee, the Blood Sword sect needed to make preparations to protect themselves. Currently, they only had Jiang Wang as their Saint King, and he was only of the 3rd heavenly layer. He was not an opponent of any of the Saint Kings that managed to flee, so handing the Divine Hall to Jiang Wang could protect them against Luo Qi and Gu Zhen's revenge. Pondering over the problem after returning to the Changyang clan, Jian Chen still ended up getting Yu Yu to watch over the flame mercenaries for a while. Although Yu Yu was still weak, he clearly felt much safer about it when he thought about Yu Yu's powerful master. Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu had already helped him enough in recent times, so Jian Chen could not shamelessly request them to watch over the flame mercenaries. Jian Chen had sent out all the scouts of the Blood Sword sect as well, searching for the experts who had fled everywhere on the continent. Although Jian Chen knew that it would probably amount to nothing, he would not give up on the slightest hope. Every single day that the Saint Kings were still alive would be another day he was unable to be at peace. In recent times, the most popular topic of discussions across the continent was the Blood Sword sect. The Blood Sword sect that had vanished for 1,000 years had actually reappeared. Not only did it draw a great deal of attention from various organizations, the sect even did something that shocked countless people. All the hidden bases of the underworld sect scattered across the continent were found by the Blood Sword sect and washed with blood. An even more shocking piece of news swept through the continent closely after that. The underworld sect that had existed for over 100,000 years on the continent had actually been wiped out by the Blood Sword sect, stunning countless people. The disturbance created by the news was so great that even Mercenary City and the three great empires were affected. After all, the Blood Sword sect was an organization equivalent to an ancient clan. Coupled with Houston, who was at the great perfection of Saint King, they would be an absolute existence even among ancient clans. It was impossible for such a great organization to not cause a disturbance after it suddenly returned. Jian Chen did not pay attention to the commotion on the continent while he stayed in the Changyang clan. He was currently with his second aunt, Yu Fengyan, in a pavilion within the garden. Yu Fengyan's eyes were red and swollen, streaks of tears covered her face. She constantly used her silk handkerchief to wipe away more tears. She had missed her daughter for many years now. Other than returning once when Jian Chen had been forced off the continent, she had not received any news of Changyang Mingyue since, which made Yu Fengyan worry since she only had one daughter. She basically spent all her time thinking about her daughter, and she had become much more haggard after all these years of longing. Yu Fengyan's yearning for her daughter reached an unprecedented peak with Changyang's return. She finally came and found Jian Chen after no longer able to hold it in. Xiangtian, I know you're a famed expert of the continent now, but I miss Mingyue far too much. Can you take me to see Mingyue? I'm begging you. I just want to catch a single glance of her and then I'll be happy, sobbed Yu Fengyan. She was extremely safe. Chapter 12:19, Proceeding to the Ice Goddess Hall, 2, Jian Chen felt rather pained when he saw just how distressed Yu Fengyan was. His second aunt held an extremely important position in his heart, even greater than his own father. This was because when he was young, Yu Fengyan cared for him the second most behind his own mother. Even his father's care was nowhere near how much Yu Fengyan cared for him, especially after he had undergone the Saint's test. Once he had been tested to be unable to use Saint Force and was labeled as a cripple, Changyangba visited him even less. Back then, only by Yun Tian, Yu Fengjiang, and Changyang Mingyue out of the entire clan cared for him. Jian Chen could feel exactly how Yu Fengyan felt when he watched her in so much heart-aching pain. He could also sense her feeling of helplessness. Ignoring the fact that the Arctic Ice Goddess Hall was not on the Tianyuan continent and was extremely far away, just the icy climate there was enough to prevent Heaven Saint Masters from getting anywhere close. Even fire-attributed Heaven Saint Masters could be frozen into an ice cube, so only Saint Rulers could survive there. Although the clan now had around a dozen Saint Rulers and several Saint Kings, every single one of them possessed great statuses. Even the patriarch of the clan, Changyangba, needed to greet them politely when he saw them, let alone Yu Fengyan, who was only one of Changyangba's many wives. On the surface, Yu Fengyan was the second madam of the clan and possessed great status, but she was nothing in front of the people who had broken away from the Protector clan. Without any doubt, requesting one of the Saint Rulers to take her to the Arctic was an absurd dream with her current status. She did not even have the right to meet them. As a result, Yu Fengyan could only find Jian Chen. She had already begun to treat Jian Chen as her only hope to see her daughter again. Jian Chen pondered the request. Although some people had managed to flee from the underworld sect, including the former sect master who was even more powerful than Luo Qi, he was not exactly helpless against them. At the same time, it had been such a long time since he had last seen his sister that he missed her as well. Jian Chen made up his mind with that. He said, "Auntie, don't be so sad. Let me organize some things and then I'll take you to the Arctic to go look for sister." "Really? Xiangtian, are you really going to take me to see Mingyue?" Yu Fengyang was overjoyed. She grabbed Jian Chen's hands excitedly. She knew that if Jian Chen turned her down, she would probably never see her daughter ever again unless Changyang Mingyue returned herself. Jian Chen nodded, "Of course I'm going to. Auntie, go rest for a while. I'll go organize some things immediately, and then I'll take you with me to the Arctic." Jian Chen left the garden and made his way to the back courtyards of the clan. The back courtyards had already become the forbidden grounds of the Changyang clan. No guard was allowed to approach them, and even the patriarch and other important figures of the clan were forbidden from entering the place without giving a prior warning because that was where Changyang Zhu Shao stayed. Other than Changyang Zhu Shao, even Changyang Zhu Yunshao, Changyang Zhu Yeyun, and the dozen or so saint rulers that had left the Protector clan lived there as well. Meanwhile, all the people that guarded the place were replaced by the Heaven Saint Masters that had left the clan with them. Jian Chen saw 4 Heaven Saint Masters sitting at the entrance to the back courtyards as soon as he approached the area. The surroundings were in utter silence. The 4 Heaven Saint Masters opened their eyes at the same time when Jian Chen arrived. After recognizing Jian Chen, they immediately stood up and politely bowed to him. Even the patriarch of the clan, Changyang Ba, needed to send a message before he could to enter, but Jian Chen did not need to. He could go in and out as he wished and no one would stop him. Jian Chen amicably nodded to the Heaven Saint Masters before entering the forbidden grounds without any resistance. He had not seen the 4 Heaven Saint Masters before, but he knew they all belonged to the Zhu branch of the Protector clan. They had all come with Changyang Zhu Shao. Jian Chen had heard about how the back courtyards had become the forbidden grounds long ago. He did not mind, and even supported the changes. After all, the people who had settled down here had been lead over by Changyang Zhu Shao and Changyang Zhu Yunshao. Changyang Zhu Shao was a saint king who was already approaching great perfection. Most importantly, Changyang Zhu Shao and Changyang Zhu Shao had left the Protector clan to help him, so even though Jian Chen's relationship with them was not deep, he still felt respect for them from the bottom of his heart. Jian Chen met Changyang Zhu Shao in a simply adorned hall. Changyang Zhu Shao's hair was pale gray. He seemed even older than he had been back in the Protector clan, and he seemed rather haggard as well. Clearly, leaving the Protector Changyang clan had affected Changyang Zhu Shao on a psychological level. After all, it had been his home for several thousand years. He had deep feelings for it. Jian Chen first bowed toward Changyang Zhu Shao, greeting him as a junior, before explaining the reason why he had come. He had come to find Changyang Zhu Shao this time to ask him to prepare against the Saint Kings of the Underworld sect, to make sure they couldn't do anything detrimental to the clan. "Xianger, you don't need to worry about that. Although I can't find Saint Kings hiding in the Jessen Kingdom, no Saint King can escape my senses if they enter this small city. The ancient secret techniques of the Protector clans are not as simple as that. However, if the Saint Kings choose to attempt an assassination, I can only protect this city. I am helpless to help the royal family of the kingdom. Considering the fact that your fiancée is a part of the royal family and is the daughter of the king, I'll get Yunshao to guard the palace. Yunshao might only be at the 5th heavenly layer, but he knows quite a few secret techniques. Ordinary Saint Kings are not his opponent in a fight," Changyang Zhu Shao said amicably. He treated Jian Chen with great importance, so he completely considered everything related to Jian Chen in this matter. Jian Chen completely stopped worrying after listening to what Changyang Zhu Shao had to say. Hesitating slightly, he asked again, "Great-grandfather, may I ask how much you know about the Arctic Ice Goddess Hall?" Changyang Zhu Shao frowned slightly when he heard the name Arctic Ice Goddess Hall. Only after a moment of silence did he say, all of my understanding of the Ice Goddess Hall comes from the ancient records of the Protector clan, which all originate from the ancient times, personally written by Saint Emperors. I only know that the organization is extremely powerful, such that even the 4 sovereigns from the ancient times did not venture there. No one knows when the Ice Goddess Hall appeared, but they never interfere with the matters of the continent, nor do they ever appear on the continent. No one else even knows of their existence other than Mercenary City and the 10 Protector clans. Their descent over a decade ago was the first time in the past million years, and it was all recorded by the Protector clans. Changyang Zhu Xiao suddenly stared at Jian Chen sternly. He asked with a heavy voice, "Xianger, do you plan on visiting the Ice Goddess Hall?" "Correct. My sister is there and I want to visit her," Jian Chen confessed. Changyang Zhu Xiao stayed silent for a while before replying with a heavy voice, "Although I've never been to the Ice Goddess Hall, I do know that it is extremely terrifying, because every single record from the Saint Emperor ancestors have warned the descendants to never offend them or try look for them. They must possess some terrifying person, but after so many years, that person feared by our Saint Emperor ancestors must have passed away. However, I still hope you can reconsider your choice. It's best if you don't go. Since the Ice Goddess Hall is so mysterious and power at the same time, why did they make my sister their holy maiden? I don't know if they're scheming something, but you're right. No matter how powerful that person was, even if they had already surpassed Saint Emperor, it's impossible for them to live for so long, so they can't be as terrifying as the past." "I need to go," replied Jian Chen. "Since you've already made up your mind, I won't stop you. But do be careful." Changyang Zhu Xiao gave up on stopping Jian Chen, seeing how he could not persuade him. Jian Chen left the back courtyards before going to find Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu again. Jian Chen needed to be cautious with the mysterious and powerful Ice Goddess Hall, so in order to deal with unforeseen events, he ended up deciding on bringing the 3 of them with him. Chapter 12:20, Frozen Statues. The Arctic was to the north of the Tianyuan continent. It was not a part of the landmass, but snowy plains that were separated by the vast sea. The climate there was freezing, and the environment was horrible. Blizzards would erupt from time to time that even Heaven Saint Masters could not withstand. There was also a white haze that filled the sky, which would quickly blow away from time to time as well, leaving behind white streaks in the air. This was the terrifying streams of coldness that were extremely active in the Arctic. It was said that they could even freeze steel into an icy mess. The space of the Arctic was unstable, so it was impossible to arrive there through a space gate. With his second and Yu Fengyan, Jian Chen, Nubis, Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu passed through a space gate to arrive above the ocean near the Arctic. They then flew toward the plains of ice. Although they had yet to set foot on the icy land, the weather was already extremely cold. The sky was hazy white while the sea water was freezing with huge blocks of ice floating in it. Most of them were Saint Kings, so they were unaffected by the chilliness that was enough to freeze ordinary people into ice statues. Only the weak Yu Fengyan paled because of the cold. Although she wore thick clothing made from fox fur, she still trembled. However, Yu Fengyan was filled with excitement even if that was the case. She felt warm inside over the fact that she would be able to see her daughter. She was willing to go through anything to see her. They arrived on the icy plains very quickly. The temperature was extremely low and the icy wind whistled across the land, cutting at them like sharp blades. Even as Saint Kings, they felt their skin tingle. The wind there could cut Earth Saint Masters into mincemeat easily, so it was impossible for ordinary people to survive there. Crack! Crack! With the soft sounds, Jian Chen, Nubis, Rui Jin, and He Yu's clothes rapidly began to freeze. In just a few seconds, they became snow-white as a thin layer of frost covered them. The next moment, the 4 of them trembled slightly and easily shook off the frost that had covered them. Their faces remained the same as before, as if the coldness here was nothing. Yu Fengyan had already arrived beside Hong Lian. The streams of coldness were unable to approach Hong Lian due to the waves of heat she gave off. The frigid air turned to nothing before the heat. "Senior Hong Lian, please look after my aunt," Jian Chen said to Hong Lian. Hong Lian was a scorching divine phoenix, a sovereign of fire, so even as an ordinary person, Yu Fengyan would not suffer at all by sticking by her side. Hong Lian nodded slightly. She wrapped her hand around Yu Fengyan and continued on into the snowy plains. The waves of heat from her were warm and gentle. Not only did they pose no harm to Yu Fengyan, they even made her feel like she was basking in the sun. They flew at a low altitude across the snowy plains, making their way to the depths. As they traveled, the temperature plummeted even more. The chilly wind there was already enough to threaten Heaven Saint Master. Unless they could control fire-attributed Saint Force, even those at the sixth cycle would be cut to pieces by the sharp, cold wind. The streams of coldness that flowed past from time to time could turn one of them into an ice statue in a single moment. They flew for 7 days across the icy plains and arrived at the depths. The cold air forced Jian Chen and newbies to carefully find a solution to deal with it. A thin layer of energy coated their bodies for protection while 3-inch-long ice crystals constantly formed on the surface of He Yu and Rui Jin's bodies, which they would shake to pieces every once in a while. However, the crystals would form again after just a few seconds, and they would have to shake them off again. They had done this for several days already. Yu Fengyan was coated by a layer of flames, so she was unaffected. Just the waves of heat from Hong Lian were not enough to fend off the cold streams of air in the depths. At this moment, the icy plains suddenly began to billow, producing ghost-like wails. A large mass of hazy whiteness quickly flew toward them from right ahead. "Be careful!" Jian Chen called out, immediately using the illusory flash to dodge. Newbies, Rui Jin, He Yu, and the others did not fall behind either, avoiding the stream of white haze. Hong Lian called out and the brightness from the flames on her exploded. The roaring flames surrounded her and Yu Fengyan with terrifying heat. The heat was enough to melt steel beams in a single moment, but it could only guard the surrounding radius of a meter from the coldness. Hong Lian's mastery over flames had already reached a level of perfection. She could control the heat of the flames as she wished, so even when engulfed by the terrifying flames, Yu Fengyan did not feel hot at all. Instead, she found them to be extremely warm since they were unable to harm her in any way. The stream of whiteness passed by very quickly. Jian Chen, He Yu, and Rui Jin all successfully avoided it, but newbies was struck by a stream in the end. The stream of whiteness was only a fist-sized ball of coldness, but it possessed unbelievable power. Newbies turned into an ice statue in a single moment after being struck. Newbies began to shine with a bright, golden light. He had been immobilized by the ice, so he was currently trying to break free with all he had. He produced a few soft cracks in the ice. With his strength as a third heavenly layer Saint King, Newbies was actually unable to break free in a short amount of time. Jian Chen stepped over and instantly arrived before him, hurling a punch at Newbies. With a muffled sound, Jian Chen's full-powered punch failed to shatter the ice. Only a tiny crack appeared. Jian Chen was not surprised. He had witnessed the power of the icy streams long ago. Without saying anything, he immediately hurled another punch. Bang! The cracks expanded once again with the sound, enveloping the ice in all directions like a web. Jian Chen punched a third time. Finally, after working from the inside and outside, Newbies broke free with a rumble. Newbies radiated with coldness after breaking free. His face had become pale, and he could not help but shiver, so cold. The great Newbies is going to be frozen to death. Be carefully. Don't get frozen next time. The streams of coldness here are just far too terrifying. If it were any other ordinary third heavenly layer Saint King, they definitely wouldn't have been able to break free without help from another person. They would have been frozen to death on the spot. Jian Chen was very stern. The Arctic plains were far more terrifying than he had expected. Where they were right now could already threaten Saint Kings. Jian Chen's group continued on. 4 hours later, they had moved another 1,000 kilometers. They could no longer endure the coldness with their bodies alone, so all of them now possessed a layer of energy protecting them. They had become much more cautious than before, and even Rui Jin, Heiyu, and Hong Lian dared not to be careless. Jian Chen had also made up his mind about sending Yu Fengyan into the Saint Artifact at any moment in time. This was because the dangers here were already enough to threaten them. After passing over an icy mountain, all of their expressions hardened. 1,000 meters in front of them, several human-shaped statues appeared. They arrived before the ice statues. They were lifelike, and they could clearly see the faces of the sculptures. Every single one of them held different poses, and they could even see a terrifying gaze in the eyes of each statue. Other than that, every single statue radiated with a vague, chilling pressure. Rui Jin, Hong Lian, Heiyu, and Nubis all gradually became solemn. Their faces were completely serious. With their knowledge and experience, they could obviously tell that the statues had not been created from ice but from people that had been frozen alive. These people were all Saint Emperors when they were alive, Rui Jin said in a heavy voice. His expression was extremely stern. Saint Emperors were already existences that stood at the very peak of the Tianyuan continent. They all felt extremely astounded by the fact that such powerful people had been frozen into statues here. These people were even more powerful than the human Saint Emperor when they were still alive, Hong Lian added in a heavy tone. She was obviously referring to the Path Lord of Carnal Desires by Human Saint Emperor. Jian Chen shivered inside. He had learned that the Ice Goddess Hall was very powerful long ago and was viewed as an extremely terrifying existence. But only now did he discover that the hall was far more terrifying than he had ever thought. There's more up ahead. Nubis cried out as he pointed ahead in disbelief. With that, everyone turned to look. 5 huge magical beasts appeared 10 kilometers away, also frozen into lifelike sculptures of ice. Those are Class 9 magical beasts. Heiyu cried out. He was astounded. Chapter 12:21, They arrived in front of the frozen Class 9 magical beasts next. All the magical beasts were extremely large, and from afar, they seemed like tall structures. 3 of them were felines, 10 meters tall and 50 or 60 meters long. The 4th one was a giant, 2-headed python that sat there. It was 3 meters thick. The 5th magical beast as an unknown mutated beast of antiquity. Its 2 huge wings were extended, covering a distance of several hundred meters. The final magical beast was a 100-meter-tall war beast. It carried a white bone club on its shoulder. Although it had already been frozen into a statue, its wild presence could still be clearly sensed. Jian Chen and Nubis looked at each other as shock filled their gazes. Seeing several frozen human Saint Emperors was already stunning enough. They had never thought that they would see another 6 frozen Class 9 magical beasts. Class 9 magical beasts stood at the same level as Saint Emperors. Even in ancient times, Class 9 magical beasts were apex existences along with Saint Emperors when ignoring the 4 great champions. They were supreme. Yet, so many human Saint Emperors and Class 9 magical beasts had been frozen to death on the icy plains, which really affected their thoughts. When did Saint Emperors become so fragile where they would end up freezing to death from the cold? If this news made it to the Tianyuan continent, it would be explosive, able to shake up all the experts on the continent. However, this exact scene just happened to reflect the terrifying power of the Ice Goddess Hall. Saint Emperors reigned supreme on the continent. No matter what identity they possessed before they died, they deserve a corresponding amount of respect. I'll take these Saint Emperors back and bury them on the Tianyuan continent, Jian Chen said in sorrow. He felt sorry for the horrible fate the Saint Emperors had suffered. They were mighty Saint Emperors, yet they met their end by freezing to death in this snowy land. There were not a lot of people throughout history who had suffered such a miserable end. Jian Chen arrived before the Saint Emperor's statues. He wanted to put them in his space ring to take them back. Unfortunately, the icy Saint Emperors had fused with the ground, so they were stuck there. Jian Chen pulled out his Emperor armament without hesitation and swung it at the ground. The ice was far tougher than he had imagined. After swinging the weapon a few times with full force, he only left behind a shallow mark. After swinging over 100 times, the frozen Saint Emperor was finally separated from the ground. However, at that moment, a crack rang out. A chink had suddenly appeared in the ice, which expanded at an unbelievable rate. It covered the entire person in just a few seconds. Bang! With a gentle sound, the entire statue shattered. There was no blood at all. The Saint Emperor's flesh had already been frozen. Jian Chen became stunned at this as he stared at the pile of ice that had once been a Saint Emperor. He could not help but sigh inside after witnessing a mighty Saint Emperor end up like this. Jian Chen did not touch the other ice statues. He returned to where the Class 9 magical beast statues were. After hesitating slightly, he jumped up and swung the Emperor armament at a feline magical beast. After attacking several dozen times, Jian Chen finally beheaded the statue. As soon as the water tank-sized head fell to the ground, it shattered with a bang, reduced to an icy mess. Crack! 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 The next moment, the cracks on the headless body quickly spread and turned it into an icy mess as well. Jian Chen looked through the mess but he failed to find a complete Class 9 monster core. All he found were pieces of a frozen monster core. All of its energy had drained away, so it was useless. Jian Chen was disappointed. He already understood that the frozen Class 9 magical beasts were worth nothing, and they could not be touched just like the human Saint Emperors, or they would be reduced to an icy mess. Even their space rings would be destroyed. These Saint Emperors and Class 9 magical beasts have died far too long ago. Their flesh has completely fused and turned into ice, Rui Jin sighed. He felt rather heavy-hearted. They've been dead for at least several hundreds of thousands of years, said Nubis. Let's continue, Jian Chen signaled everyone. They no longer paid attention to the ice statues and continued on. As they rapidly traveled deeper into the icy plains, they came across quite a few ice statues. There were both humans and magical beasts, but they were all at the level of Saint Emperor. None of them were weaker than Saint Emperor. This place is just too terrifying. We've found over 30 Saint Emperors and Class 9 magical beasts that have been frozen into statues, Nubis said with a slight tremble to his voice. He had already begun to feel some dread for this place. This was basically a graveyard for Saint Emperors. An hour later, they traveled another 500 kilometers. The temperature there half dropped even lower. Jian Chen and Nubis were already using everything they had to stay warm while Yu Fengyan had been sent into the artifact space by Jian Chen. Even Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu had donned their origin armor. There's another fallen expert here, Nubis said as he pointed ahead. An extremely burly man sat on the ground. His eyes were tightly closed, having died long ago. There's words. Jian Chen said with a hoarse voice. A line of words had been carved into the ice right in front of the man. I am Erton. I was invincible. After several hundred years of secluded cultivation, I failed to break through to the origin realm. I learned of the mysterious ice goddess Hall from ancient records and came to find them, but who would have thought that I would freeze to death before I could even catch a glimpse of them? I am unwilling. I am filled with unwillingness for falling here, Erton, it's actually Erton. He's the ruler of the beast god continent 500,000 years ago. It's said that he was the strongest magical beast, having reached the peak of Class 9. No one was his opponent among the humans and the magical beasts. I never thought he ended up dying here, Nubis cried out. Chapter 12:22. Changyang Mingyue Jianchen trembled inside when he heard that. After examining the frozen middle-aged man again, he felt exceptionally shocked inside. Even the ruler of the beast god continent, having reached the apex of Saint Emperor and only a single step away from the supreme origin realm, had frozen to death here as well. The shock that it brought Jianchen was far greater than seeing the 30-odd Saint Emperors and Class 9 magical beasts earlier. The power of peak Saint Emperors was incomparable to regular Saint Emperors. The difference was akin to the 9th heavenly layer of Saint Ruler and the 1st heavenly layer of Saint King or Saint Kings at great perfection and those who had only recently become Saint Kings. Although they belonged to the same level of cultivation, the disparity was enormous. Not only was Erton a peak Saint Emperor, he was a beast of antiquity as well. He was even more powerful than human peak Saint Emperors, and it would be true to call him the strongest beneath the origin realm. Yet, even someone like Erton could not avoid being frozen into a statue. Not only this made Jianchen and Nubis shiver inside, even Rui Jin, He Yu, and Hong Lian felt the same. 500,000 years ago, Erton was invincible. There was no one who could defeat him, but he actually met his end on these icy plains and did not fall in battle. This place is just too terrifying, Nubis said in shock. He was shivering inside. His fear for this place had become much heavier after seeing Erton's frozen corpse. It was not just Nubis. Even Jianchen felt a sliver of dread. The icy plains were far too terrifying, just the icy climate was enough to freeze Saint Emperors to death. No wonder the Saint Emperor ancestors of the Protector clans were so fearful of the ice goddess Hull. Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu looked at each other and became extremely solemn. Even before Saint Emperors, they had never shown such a serious expression before. Nubis bowed deeply to Erton before continuing on with Jianchen and the others. They did not touch Erton's corpse, not even the space ring on his finger. With what they had experienced earlier, they all knew that both Erton and his space ring had been reduced to ice after so many years. His entire body would turn into an icy mess after the layer of ice on the surface was destroyed. Everyone felt very heavy inside after witnessing what had happened to Erton. They did not say anything and continued on in a straight path. After traveling for another 100 kilometers, Nubis could no longer endure it any longer as the weakest. He was sucked into the artifact space by Jianchen. If it were not for Jianchen's chaotic body and the chaotic force, he probably would not have been able to last until now either. The coldness had reached an extremely terrifying level where even the saint force of Saint Kings could be frozen. The only reason why Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu could continue on was because they used their own great powers along with the origin energy armor. However, they knew very well that the coldness was far weaker than several hundreds of thousand years ago. Otherwise, they would not have been able to make it further than Erton with their strength as Saint Kings. They might have already been frozen into lifelike statues before they had even seen the Saint Emperor statues. They traveled another half a day, but they only traveled 500 kilometers during that time. They were obstructed by a layer of boundless cold mist. The mist seemed to form a natural barrier, stopping them in their path. This mist is something else, Hong Lian said heavily as she stared at the mist after they all had stopped. It was illogical for mist to exist at such a terrifyingly cold temperature. Mist was fine droplets of water, yet it was impossible for water to exist in this wasteland because all of it should have frozen into ice that was tougher than steel. You guys stay here first. I'll go in and have a look, said Hong Lian. The flames on her glowed much brighter and the scorching god fire hairpin appeared in her hands. She carefully made her way into the region of mist. As soon as she stepped into the mist, a hissing sound was immediately produced from the contact of mist and flames. However, the mist was far more terrifying than anyone had imagined. Hong Lian only lasted a few seconds before her roaring flames were suppressed by the mist. Within the next few seconds, the flames had been forced back into her body. The coldness rapidly drew closer to Hong Lian, where even her fire-red feather mail became coated by a thin layer of white frost. Hong Lian paled in fright. She had realized long ago that the mist was nowhere near as simple as it seemed, but in no way did she ever expect it to be so terrifying. Without holding back, white flames surged from her hairpin, engulfing her in a single moment. The power of the white flames was incomparable to the power of the red flames. As soon as they appeared, the ice crystals on her melted and even the mist around her was forced back by 3 inches. Hong Lian was relieved. She continued on as she protected herself with her hairpin. However, the coldness in the mist increases as she went deeper inside. Taking just the first step, the mist grew half an inch closer to her, now 2.5 inches away. When she took a second step, the mist grew another half an inch closer, now 2 inches away. With the third step, it was 1.5 inches away, and with the fourth, it was only an inch away from her. Hong Lian gently sighed as she looked at the white haziness that showed no signs of ending. She carefully backed off. She knew if she took a fifth step, the coldness would end up pressing against her skin and she would be frozen into a statue. Even with her origin energy weapon, it might not be enough to keep her safe. You should all see as well. The mist is far more terrifying than we imagined. Even I can only take a few steps. You can't make it through it, Hong Lian said with some dejection. She reigned supreme with fire and could conquer the cold. However, even the mist did not open a path for her even after she had brandished her origin energy weapon. She was unable to lighten up no matter what over this. Jian Chen frowned as well. He could obviously see just how terrifying the mist was, but it seemed to form a barrier stopping them. It was boundless, so if they could not pass through it, they could only end their journey there, let alone find the ice goddess hall. At the same time, in a room completely constructed from ice, a lady, who seemed to be around 20 years of age, sat on a white piece of ice as she cultivated. The lady was extremely pretty, such that her beauty could outshine the moon. She was completely snow-white, not only her hair, but her eyebrows and eyelashes as well. The lady was Changyang Mingyue, who had left the clan many years ago. Suddenly, Changyang Mingyue opened her eyes. Her face lit up in surprise, and she excitedly said, "Brother, it's my brother. I can see my brother." With that, she leaped off the ice and ran out of the room as a white blur. There was a room completely constructed from snow and ice, and all the decor in there was created from ice crystals. They shone brightly and were extremely pretty. Although the room was wonderfully decorated, it was all snow-white. There was only white, and the temperature there had also reached an unbelievably low level. Compared to the temperature in the room, an eternal cavern of ice was like a scorching volcano. A person clad in white armor sat on a bed of ice in the room. Her eyes were closed and the armor completely covered her, only revealing her eyes. Even her face was concealed. At this moment, the door to the room forcefully swung open. Changyang Mingyue ran in with bare feet in joy as she urgently said, "Protector Shui, I can see my brother. I can see my brother. My brother's come, and he's been obstructed by the profound ice chi outside. Let him in quick." Her voice was filled with excitement. Perhaps due to being overjoyed, a faint red flush had appeared on her pale white face. Protector Shui slowly opened her eyes. She could not help but gently sigh when she saw how excited Changyang Mingyue was. She said, "Your Majesty, can't you just forget about them?" The them she had mentioned was not just Jian Chen, it included all the people in the Changyang clan and all the people Changyang Mingyue once knew. Changyang Mingyue became angered. "Protector Shui, I can never forget my brother. He will always be my brother, so hurry up and let him in. Sigh, Protector Shui exhaled. Helplessness filled her eyes. Chapter 1223, Reuniting Mother and Daughter. 1. Jian Chen, Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu camped for quite some time outside the hazy mist. All of them frowned, but none of them could do anything to the terrifying mist, including Rui Jin. Rui Jin and Hong Lian used countless secret techniques of their clans during that time, but they were all useless. Even Jian Chen's presence was unable to penetrate through the mist. As soon as his presence entered it, the chilling coldness would attack his mind by following his presence, stunning him to the point where he no longer dared to make any future attempts. Looks like this is as far as we can go, Jian Chen said in a heavy voice. He was extremely disappointed. He had never thought that they would fail to even catch a single glimpse of the Ice Goddess Hall despite bringing such a powerful party. At this moment, the mist ahead began to churn violently, slowly parting open. Very soon, a 3-meter-wide path formed in front of the four of them, and at the end of the path was a snow-white and bright glacial world, not a hazy mist. They all looked at each other after the passageway suddenly appeared. They had never thought that the mist that had stopped them from traveling further would create a path. They were in disbelief. Suddenly, Jian Chen seemed to think of something. His eyes immediately lit up and he said, I understand. This layer of mist must be controlled by someone, and the controller probably knows of our arrival, which is why they've formed a tunnel for us to get through. However, Jian Chen could not help but think about how his sister had become the holy maiden of the Ice Goddess Hall. He guessed that Changyang Mingyue possessed quite the status within the Ice Goddess Hall, but he was uncertain if the formation of the tunnel had anything to do with her. With the tunnel, the four of them gave up on the thought of returning. They then carefully passed through it. The tunnel in the mist was 1,000 meters long. The four of them passed through it very soon and arrived in a region beyond the mist. The environment past the mist was like heaven compared to the climate outside. Although it was still a world of ice and snow, the landscape was pretty, picturesque like a lovely drawing. The surrounding glaciers were crystal clear, like huge mountains of crystal. If the region outside the mist was like the churning sea, this would be a flat and peaceful part of the ocean. There was no terrifying wind or any icy temperatures that could freeze Saint Kings to death. Outside, even regular Saint Kings would struggle to survive, yet even people as weak as Earth Saint Masters could move around freely here. Although the two places were only separated by 1,000 meters of mist, they felt like they were two completely different worlds. Is this the Ice Goddess Hall? Suddenly, He Yu pointed ahead and asked. They looked to where he was pointing, and 20 kilometers away, a crystal palace that seemed to have been carved from ice stood quietly on the icy plains. It gave off a respectful presence, as if it had stood through many years of wind and rain. Although it was grand and beautiful, the four of them could clearly feel that it was filled with the ancient presence of time. The crystal palace seemed to have stood all by itself for countless years, while the ancient presence was far heavier than any item they had ever seen that had managed to survive through the ages. This must be the Ice Goddess Hall. We've finally arrived, Jian Chen mumbled as he stared at the divine hall up ahead. His voice was filled with some excitement, and he instinctively began to walk over in a hurry. The four of them stopped in front of the Ice Goddess Hall very soon. Only by standing in front of the structure could they feel its grandeur. They felt like ants standing before an elephant. The feeling did not seem to linger around the building, but from the vast presence of the structure. Dazed, they suddenly felt a different impression, as if they were not facing against the pretty Ice Goddess Hall, but the infinite cosmos. A person in silver-white armor stood silently at the top of the structure. Her armor covered every part of her, including her face. Only two icy cold eyes were revealed, but it was still possible to tell that she was female from the shape of her body. She stood there unmoving like an ice statue, nor did she give off any presence. She seemed to have completely fused with the surroundings, becoming a part of the world. Protector Shui glanced over the four of them with her emotionless eyes, but to them, she seemed to be transparent. None of them discovered her existence. Chapter 1224, Reuniting Mother and Daughter. 2. Jian Chen, Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu all observed the huge divine hall in front of them unblinkingly. The ancient, vast presence struck their souls in waves, filling them with deep shock. Rui Jin and Hong Lian were the first ones to calm down. They stared sternly at the divine hall, and a similar thought crossed both their minds. The divine hall did not belong to this world at all. With a rumble, the crystal door slowly opened. A completely snow-white beauty silently stood there with bare feet as a certain coldness immediately surged out. "Brother!" The lady focused all her attention on Jian Chen, as if Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu were all transparent. Her face was filled with great joy and excitement while her voice slightly trembled. Jian Chen's gaze also landed on her. Although they had not seen each other for over a decade, he was still able to recognize her at first glance. She was the person he was searching for, his sister Changyang Mingyue. "Sister!" Jian Chen cried out as his heart began to churn as well. Other than Bai Yuntian, his sister had cared for him the most when he was young. At that time, his brother Changyang Ku bullied him several times, and every time Changyang Mingyue saw him, she would stand on his side without any hesitation. As a result, Jian Chen viewed his sibling kinship with her in an extremely important light, even surpassing his brotherhood with Changyang Hu. It was just a pity after the matters that had occurred with the Huayun sect back then, Jian Chen was forced to leave Lore City. He never saw his sister again and did not even hear any news involving her. Both he and Yu Fengyan ended up believing many times that Changyang Mingyue had suffered an accident, filling them both with sorrow. Changyang Mingyue stepped over the great door sill and ran toward Jian Chen. Jian Chen also emotionally ran to her. As they grew closer and closer, Jian Chen could feel the temperature around him rapidly plummet. When they were only 10 meters away, Jian Chen had become covered in a white layer of frost. Jian Chen quickly calmed down. He could feel the sudden drop in temperature in his surroundings and could not help but feel secretly shocked. However, what surprised him even more was that all the coldness actually came from Changyang Mingyue. Changyang Mingyue's face immediately changed when she saw the layer of frost on Jian Chen. She immediately halted and rapidly backed off, drawing far away from Jian Chen. At the same time, she urgently cried out, "Don't come over." Jian Chen stopped and looked at her from 30 meters away. He asked, "Sister, just what is happening? Why are you radiating such coldness?" Changyang Mingyue radiated with an extremely cold presence. If it were not for the fact that they were in a world of ice and snow, probably a thick layer of ice would have formed in the radius of several thousand meters. Even bodies of water would end up freezing. Changyang Mingyue was pained. "Brother, it's my profound ice body. My profound ice body has not fully matured yet, so I can't control the profound ice chi that I radiate. How have you become like this, sister? What is all this about?" Jian Chen asked rather urgently. In his memory, his sister had never been like this before. "It's a long story. I'll tell you about it in detail later, but I heard from Protector Shui that you came across a few problems a few years ago. Are some large clans or sects bullying you? Don't worry. Once my profound ice body fully matures, I'll go to the Tian Yuan continent and teach all those people a lesson," Changyang Mingyue firmly promised. She cared for Jian Chen very much, as if he was an eternal child in her eyes. Jian Chen suddenly felt extremely warm inside. Thinking back to his youth, wasn't this exactly how his sister watched over him? She did not want him to be bullied at all, and his brother Changyang Ku had been secretly punished by her several times. What she did not know was whenever Changyang Ku tried to bully him, he would not only fail, but end up getting the short end of the stick himself. He had never succeeded in benefiting at Jian Chen's expense. Has mother been well? And how have father, first aunt, third aunt, and fourth aunt been? What about big brother and Uncle Chang? I actually really want to go home. I miss mother so much, but I can't right now. Protected Shui won't let me, Changyang Mingyue said in a rather depressed manner. Her joy from seeing Jian Chen just now gradually faded away as worry filled her face. She wanted to go home far too much. Jian Chen suddenly snapped back to his sense as soon as he heard about Yu Fengyan. He immediately retreated to Hong Lian's side and released Yu Fengyan from the saint artifact. Originally, Jian Chen only planned on letting her out, but Nubis ended up coming out as well when he heard that they had arrived at the Ice Goddess Hall. Although the coldness was much less than outside, it was still not something that Yu Fengyan could endure as a great saint master. Fortunately Hong Lian's was there to help out, keeping the low temperature at bay with her flames. Mother. Changyang Mingyue became so excited to the point that she could not express her emotions properly when she saw Yu Fengyan. She charged up without thinking, but she stopped after just 2 steps. Tears rolled down her face as she slowly backed off in pain. She knew just how powerful the profound ice chi she radiated with was. It was not something Yu Fengyan could endure. Yu Fengyan became stunned the moment she saw Changyang Mingyue. Tears poured uncontrollably from her eyes while an endless number of thoughts bounced around. She bit her lip tightly as she stared at Changyang Mingyue and could not help but tremble violently. Mingyue! Yu Fengyan called out the next moment and quickly ran toward Changyang Mingyue. There was only one thing she wanted to do right now, and that was to tightly embrace her daughter who she had thought of daily. How could Jian Chen let Yu Fengyan run over? As soon as she began to move she was blocked by Jian Chen. Xiangtian, let me through. Don't block me. Xiangtian, I'm begging you. Let me through. Yu Fengyan struggled in the space frozen by Jian Chen as she pleaded through her sobs. Jian Chen's heart ached inside. If he didn't need to, he really would not have stopped Yu Fengyan, but he was considering her safety right now. No matter how reluctant he was, he needed to stop her. Aunt, sister's profound ice body radiates a terrifying coldness. You can't go over, or you'll be frozen into an ice statue, Jian Chen bitterly explained. I don't care. Even if I freeze to death, I don't care. Xiangtian, I'm begging you, don't stop me. Just let me through. I just want to get a good look at Mingyue, Yu Fengyan sobbed. You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.